You're having a repairing conversation because of something you did that you're not proud of. In another clip, I outlined the ingredients and recommended you start off with connection. What does that look like? Well, you're going to take as long as is needed to make your child feel heard, understood, cared for, and to show you are really sorry for how they have suffered, without abasing yourself. You're accepting responsibility while staying in your dignified parent power. I might get things going with, "Sweetie, I'm thinking about what happened earlier when I found your snack in the bin, about how I shouted. I think it was horrible for you, right? I wonder how you're feeling about it." Perhaps my child shrugs, passive-aggressive style. "I don't care. You're always shouting at me." Now, I know that's not true, and this is why I've got myself well grounded for this conversation, so I can keep up the compassion for my child and not make it all about me. Or perhaps my poor child is trying to parent me. "It's okay, Mom. I know you were upset. I'm fine." Either way, I persist because there's mending to be done. So I say, "If I remember, I shouted that I was sick and tired of you lying. I imagine that was terribly hurtful." "I'm not a liar." And it really sucks to be labeled something like being a liar. You want some self-respect, right? My child maybe rolls her eyes, but I feel she's softening a little. So I say, "Did you feel like I was judging you, blaming you?" "I'm always doing something wrong. You're always judging me." Gosh, that sounds very painful. I am so sorry. It's horrible to feel judged. And that's how you felt when I shouted? "It was a very big snack." So it was really difficult. And instead of getting my support, you got my angry outburst. Yeah. Maybe what you really needed was a respectful conversation about what had happened to make you bin the snack. "I'm really doing my best. You don't understand how hard it is." Of course, darling. I'm here to help, not bring you down. So I'm really regretting that I shouted and used those words. It's made you extra unhappy at a time that things are already so hard for you. I am truly sorry. "It's okay. I can see why you'd get annoyed when I bin food." So at this stage, I'm guessing my child has felt the connection. Before we move on, I might check, is there anything more that's painful to you? Sometimes our children pick a fight over one thing because they're upset over another thing that's too embarrassing for them to bring up. Perhaps they fear it will seem petty and trivial, so it's good to check. Remember also the power of a hug. To make it easier, try and start the conversation already sitting quite close to your child, side by side. You could say, "Are we good? May I give you a hug?" And see if you get a wholehearted yes. If you sense there's more that needs mending, see if you want to keep going or to return to the topic some other time, because these intense conversations can be tiring. So what principles did I use? I tried to give my child space to express how she suffered because of what I did. And because she might be scared to say too much, I'm making guesses, and whatever she comes up with, I'm validating how it felt for her. It's totally normal that my child should exaggerate how I'm always doing this and never doing that. And that's a sure sign I need to keep up the connection bit of the conversation rather than correct her. The main thing about repair, I believe, is that your child feels seen for what they experienced. So keep listening and reflecting back and validating feelings and unmet needs. Some people really need to hear, "I'm sorry." So at various points, express how you regret what you did, how you are sorry for what you did. Now, don't engage with a "you're good, I'm bad" kind of power play. When we were children, that's how apologies used to work. We were told, "Say you're sorry and look like you mean it." None of that now. You're a good person who made a mistake and you wish you had acted differently. It's a sincere apology and it will only serve your connection if it comes from your wise adult self. In the previous audio, I demonstrated how you might connect with your child to repair the relationship, all the empathy and good listening and validating. What's next? In the connect before you direct framework, what's in the direct bit? Well, your child needs to hear your intention not to repeat your mistake. Otherwise, any apology may sound rather hollow, and also your child may continue to be very wary of you because they fear a recurrence. One tip is to start with, I should have, or I wish that I had. Imagine you had all the resources in the world and all the foresight. What would you have done differently then? So you might say, when I saw your snack in the bin, I should have taken a break to calm down, so that when I did come to ask you about it, I could have been more supportive. And now tell your child how you intend not to repeat the same mistake, such as, sweetie, from now on I'm going to do my very best not to raise my voice and to choose my words with care. I really don't want to shout at you again. What I'm going to do is, when I feel like I'm getting cross, I'm going to take some time to calm down in my room so that when I do talk with you, it will be supportive. How does that sound? I suggest you don't promise never to shout again, never to use hurtful words. I think all we can realistically promise is to do our very best. See if it feels useful to explain your side of things. Will it help your child connect with you? See that you are a good human being who makes mistakes if you share what happened with you. Just make sure it doesn't sound as though you're now denying responsibility. And don't put your child in the role of comforter. They are not your parent, and if you still feel guilty, that's your issue to deal with, preferably before you start the repairing conversation. Here's what explaining your side of things might sound like. I think one reason I exploded when I saw your snack in the bin is I'd just come in desperate for some rest after spending several hours helping out at my mother's. You know, the toilet stuff, the showering. She was tired, she got mad at me. I'm not used to it and I get upset. I had nothing left in me. When I got home and saw your snack in the bin, I went for a knee-jerk reaction instead of taking the time to work out how best to talk with you about it. Have you heard of the hot potato? Many conflicts come from us passing a hot potato from one person to the next because, ouch, it's hot. We wouldn't blow up so much if we could deal with whatever hot potato someone else has dumped us with. As you explain how you were struggling with a hot potato, a side benefit could be that your child learns something about managing emotions. Now, at this stage, you're probably both feeling pretty good and you could get on with your lives. But what if there's still a problem to solve, the very thing that made you lose control in the first place? For example, you might say, all this started off because I saw your snack in the bin. Shall we see what we could do if you have an urge to bin food again? And now you're problem solving together. If your child has nothing to propose, you may have to make suggestions and prompt for agreements or insist on some solution and say, we'll try it and then review in a week. For more help on this, see more of my audios on communication. Repairing the relationship is about trust and feelings and being there for one another. It's not laissez-faire, permissive, oh, if you don't want your snack, you can bin it. The beauty is that as you nurture the connection, you're more likely to be able to move forward with the many difficult things that need to be done to get your child to recovery. We've talked about repairing the relationship when you, the parent, have acted poorly. How about when the poor behavior comes from your child? Of course, you can expect lots and lots of poor behavior while your child is suffering from an eating disorder. Most of the time, it's probably wise to let it pass. I'm thinking of all the movies where women are giving birth, screaming abuse at everyone. Nobody expects an apology later. Nobody takes it personally. If we all understand it's not personal, then we can let it wash over us. But sometimes you might decide to initiate a repairing conversation because you're guessing that your child might feel guilty and ashamed, or because you need to discuss how to do things differently in the future for their sake, or even for your sake. One of your limits might have been crossed. So you might pick a quiet time and say, "See, at lunchtime, when you tried to hit me, I really didn't like it. I wonder what was going on for you?" And take it from there. Lots of listening, making empathy guesses, validating emotions and unmet needs. All the usual elements of good communication. End with a hug and with how much you love your child. You might also need to make a firm request. From now on, when you're feeling out of control, can we agree you will use your voice, not your fists? Or perhaps you need to problem solve. But first, you need to connect, otherwise your child will feel even more ashamed and defensive. Some young people are sweetly and movingly good at initiating repair. They say, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I shouted at you. I don't like hurting you. I feel bad." Oh, it's so moving. Now, here's something that might surprise you. I propose that you don't dismiss them with a quick, "It's okay, sweetie, not a problem." I'm especially not a fan of, "It's okay, I know it wasn't you, it was the eating disorder." I think your child needs to know that you've heard their regret. So take a moment to show you're hearing them and to reflect back, like, "Darling, thank you for coming to say this. I can see you're unhappy about what you did. I can see you care. I love you. And now's a great time for a hug and, if appropriate, some problem solving." Every now and again, your child may well accuse you of being patronizing. "Don't speak to me like that. Ha ha ha, you're so patronizing. Oh yes, you care." You know, that kind of thing. And it's really off-putting to parents because maybe you're busy learning new ways of talking, which you really hope will be helpful. You feel a little bit uncertain, you're walking on eggshells, and then wham, you're being told it's all rubbish, you're being patronizing. So I recommend that you expect to be told that kind of thing, because actually nobody can speak perfectly all the time. The way through this is to go for complete honesty. Say that you really didn't want to sound patronizing, that you really care very genuinely, and what you really desperately want to do is put across your real genuine message. So you're going to try again. Let me give you an example. Your child is struggling to eat and you've just made a compassionate comment, maybe like, "I'm so sorry, I can see that this cheese is really hard for you right now." And sometimes that will be perfectly fine and wonderful. And other times your child will say, "Oh, you're so patronizing." So you can then go, "Oh, damn it, I'm so frustrated. I'm really trying to show you that I care. And the last thing I want is for me to be making it harder for you, to make you feel more alone and isolated and misunderstood. I really want to be there for you." Because obviously you want someone to sound genuine, genuinely caring, and that's how I feel. So, let me try again. I want you to really know, I can see that eating this is hard for you in some way, and I'm really sorry. That's what I'm trying to say. I wish it was easier for you. Is that any better? And then your child might roll their eyes, or they might laugh. Or they might say, "Oh, look, just shut up. Everything you say makes things worse." And you go, "All right, sweetie, I really don't want to make things worse." And then you keep quiet. Or maybe your child says, "I'm not a 3-year-old, you know." And this is a common worry from parents, that if they're going to be kind, they might sound like they're treating their child far too young. And I'm very conscious that when I'm modeling conversations in these audios, my tone of voice doesn't always sound like how I want it to sound. Maybe it sounds a little bit too young. And yet, compassionate responses should be applicable to any age. We may change our tone of voice and some of the detail, but the principles should remain. We should sound kind and say kind words, whether the person is a young child, a teen, or an adult. You want a kind tone of voice to get your child out of fight, flight, freeze. The kindness, the warmth in your voice does matter. So yes, it is difficult to get it right when your child is very antagonistic. And at the same time, I would encourage you to be genuine. If you are in a place of love, then trust that your meaning will come across. I sometimes talk about giving you a formula, but actually nothing is a formula. I'm really guiding you to speak from the heart and then to trust that your message will come across, and if it doesn't, you can tweak it. So your child's saying, you sound like you're talking to a 3-year-old, then you go, oh, I'm so sorry, let me try again. What I wanted to say was, I get it that this cheese is tough, and I'm here to help you. Does that sound better? Ultimately, your child might not be happy with anything you say. The main thing is that you have some tools so that you're confident to speak, and if it's not great, you can rectify it. You can have another go and be transparent about how you're really trying to be helpful. If your child's in a bad physical condition, is it useful to tell them at every meal, look, your heart's really bad, you have to eat, lay on the medical side of it? Now, the medical side is obviously very important, and it would be a good reason to say, no, you're not going running. But I'm talking to a couple of parents where their daughter is going, yeah, my heart's bad, yeah, I know. And it's just adding to the conflict, to the emotional intensity of, you're just annoying me, you're preaching to me, that kind of thing. So here's what I said to those parents. It would be okay to talk about the heart, but in more emotional terms. I think it would be, and when I heard that your heart rate was low, I was heartbroken. You're so precious to me, my little girl.
Oh.
I really want to take care of you. It's my job as a mom to take care of you. And, you're saying I'm doing this to you. It's really tough. I really want to protect you. And at this stage, I would add, and it won't be forever. This whole difficult thing that you're having to do, it's time limited. I'll cover that in another clip. I've just been speaking with a couple who have been trying to speak to their daughter with empathy. And what they're saying is it doesn't work. She rejects them. She says, I'm fine. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk. And so they feel they can't communicate with her, and she's alone in her distress. Although on the whole, she is pretty well. She's well on the way to recovery. Here's one possible reason why your empathy might get rejected, and it's to do with the person's only way that they know of staying safe, of not making themselves extra vulnerable when they already feel pretty unstable. I think that when our children have an eating disorder, they're living with a more or less constant level of anxiety. And when you're anxious, you tend to close in on yourself and build a fortress wall around yourself, which is something like, everyone's against me. I have to rely on myself. I have to be independent just in order to survive this. So you've got this wall built around you that holds you up. And then here come your loving parents that have been close and nurturing to you all your life. And they're giving you all this kindness. And you feel vulnerable. You feel you could cry. You feel you could melt. And recently, the only thing that's made you just being able to hold on is to push everyone away and stay behind your wall. So you hang on to your wall, you can't imagine that relying on anyone and getting anyone's support could help. It's like, I am alone here and I am just barely surviving. So back off, mum and dad. You can't help me. It's really about, I cannot make myself vulnerable here because I could become very unsafe. So what you're really trying to do there is keep up the kindness and the trustworthiness and maybe reflect that possibility to them. Maybe being able to say, I'm wondering if you feel you really can't lean on us in any way and we're giving you kindness and maybe you feel you have to be really tough and not let us in. And yet we're genuinely interested in what's going on for you. Does it feel odd or risky in some way to trust us? And then see where that leads you. You might get a conversation or you might not. Be patient. Imagine you had found a wounded dog and you want to tend to it and it just growls and snaps at you and is quite scary. So you approach it carefully, one bit at a time, and gradually you tame it. It's got to feel safe before it trusts you. And I guess with some of our children, it does take time. And you don't win that once and for all. You get good moments and then you get really, back off moments. So patience for you, and obviously nutrition, your child getting better physically is also going to help, because that in itself reduces their overall level of distress. There is, of course, in addition to all this, the aspect that your child could be pushing you away because then they could get away with less eating. There's another possible reason why your child might reject your empathy and your love, and that's because they don't feel worthy of love. I'll do that in another audio clip. In another clip, I propose one reason why our children might at times refuse our kindness and go, yeah, I'm fine, leave me alone. We just can't get to them in spite of all our empathy. Now, one reason might be that they don't feel worthy. They don't feel worthy of love. So you're showing love and they're thinking, this can't possibly be genuine. I am such a horrible person and I have hurt my parents so much. I have done so much damage to this family. Only yesterday I was shouting at my mom or my dad, or, there's a lot of reasons for really not liking myself. So I cannot believe when I receive kindness that it's genuine. And supposing it's genuine, I don't deserve it because I'm a bad person. So that's shame. The remedy, let's say, to that is for you as a parent to keep on showing your child unconditional love, and maybe to raise a conversation, if you can, if your child will let you in, about, you are love-worthy. Maybe attempt to have a mending conversation about something that they did. So if they were particularly rude or aggressive to you yesterday, then don't just let it pass. Have a conversation so that peace is restored and they know that they are loved, even though their behavior was not acceptable and you never want to see that behavior again. Feeling not worthy of love is probably part of the human condition, and it's worse when someone is suffering. It's worse when someone is really needing help from others. So it's not surprising that our children should be taking some time over this and that they need extra reassurance from us. I really do love you. I really don't blame you for X, Y, Z. Yes, I wish your behaviors were different. And at the same time, you are my cherished child. We will always love you. So you might need to really make that super explicit to counter the noise in their head. This clip is for when your child says, you don't understand how hard it is for me. So they're throwing your kindness in your face, they're rejecting you, they're accusing you of not understanding them. And in this example, it's particularly around how hard it is to eat.
That's a gift, because what she's really saying is, please understand me.
Yeah.
Please appreciate how hard it is for me. I mean, that's a real appeal for connection. Don't we all want people to understand how we're suffering? So it can be, that's a really easy one, because it's not even a question, it's a complaint. Let me model it for you. You don't understand how hard it is. Oh, sweetie, I'm sure I don't. I'm sure I don't. I can see you're suffering, and I really, really want to understand. How hard is it? What is going on for you, my darling? Well, you don't care. I'm really interested. Please, I want to put myself in your shoes. How hard is it? What's hard? Tell me more. It's really hard. Every meal you give me is hard. Oh, I can imagine, darling. It breaks my heart to see you suffer like that. These meals are hard for you, yeah? I'm so sorry you have to go through that. And you can probably stay there, but if she goes on, you could say, and at the same time, and you really have to have them. There's no other way. That's hard, isn't it? The whole treatment is about it's hard and you have to go through it. It's not a but. When you give empathy, try and never use but. Try whenever you're about to say but, which we all do. It's so hard and it's got to be done. Not but, it's got to be done.
Now, at this stage, this mother is appreciating this guidance, and she's reflecting on the fact that her daughter goes, yeah, my heart's bad. Yeah, I have to eat.
I would say she's missing empathy there. Yeah, my heart needs it. You're missing my whole point, which is I want you to know how upset I am.
I also made a suggestion, which was to reflect how alone this girl sounds. Something like, oh, nobody understands me. Go away. There's no way you can understand me.
That sounds really lonely. You know, that you're trying hard and you think I have no idea how hard it is. That sounds lonely. So tell me, you are trying really hard, aren't you? So I would try and get her to express all that.
Whenever I model conversations, I'm very conscious it's slightly artificial, but you adapt it to your style. It could be quite a bit more matter of fact, as long as you show your kindness in the way your child knows this is my mom or my dad being kind and loving me.
I'm responding to a mum who wants some help in connecting more with her daughter. The girl has been really upset about her insisting that she eats breakfast in order to go to school, and she keeps saying to her mum, "You're disrespecting me." I'm using this as an example for you of a connecting conversation in general, and also it may help you if you get accused of not saying the right things. My instinct is it's not exactly what she's feeling. It's more that you're giving her no choice, and that's very scary for her, and she'll do anything to wriggle out of it. You're doing all the right things in continuing to make sure that you serve the meals and she's eating all of it, or as much as you manage to get her to eat, so that's great. And then because the connection is so difficult at the moment, I might look for some way of giving her empathy for this issue around disrespect. For example, okay, sweetie, you and I are not talking at the moment, and you've told me at some stage that you feel disrespected. So tell me more about this, because feeling disrespected is bloody awful, and I don't want that for you. So tell me more. What is it exactly? I'm not talking. Look, I would really like to understand. Is it that you've lost your decision-making autonomy? And then maybe she go, I don't want to talk. So you could go, well, I'm wondering if it's that, because we're giving you no choice around the meals. And at your age, maybe that feels disrespectful of your choices. Is it that? And maybe she will talk, or maybe she will again blank you out, so you could make another try. I'm wondering if it's my tone of voice. Did I sound critical? Was I treating you like you were a tiny, small, stupid thing? Am I speaking to you all right now? Let's look at what we can do right now. Am I speaking to you in a voice and a tone of voice that seems respectful to you right now? And otherwise, I'll do my best to fix it. So tell me, I'm listening. I really want to make it easy for you. Please tell me. I'm really trying my best. This is not natural for me either. What is natural is that I love you and I really, really care for you, and I'll do anything to make your life good. What's not natural to me is finding the right words. This is an odd situation. That's kind of the way I would look, and also it might not work. She might have a great big fence around her to protect her from feeling very vulnerable. And so parents can't get close. So we need self-empathy, we need compassion for others, we need patience. But meanwhile, we are constantly nurturing the relationship, and eventually this thawing will happen and we will be so close. It's very beautiful.
Is your child behaving very aggressively? Absolutely uncharacteristically, no doubt, but at the moment it's really hard. You say things, you give a meal, and you get very, very violent reaction. It's exhausting for you. Maybe you're feeling disrespected, and how far does this go? And you might also be wondering, are you being a pushover and you're encouraging more of that behavior? Here's my conversation.
So first of all, I want to reassure you that nearly every parent I talk to goes through this in the early feeding stage. And then I speak to them 2-3 weeks later and they say, oh, it's so much better. We just have a few flare-ups now. And then eventually it all goes. So there is hope for you. Yeah. What you're experiencing is normal and temporary. This is not a battle of you and her. You don't need to show her you're right. You're on her side. You're just seeing a kid who's distressed. The more she shouts, the more you know she's in distress. So you're busy thinking what will help her. It doesn't mean you're a doormat. So you say, keep your voice down, lower your voice. I want to listen to you. So that's where you're not a pushover. That's your line in the sand. But she can still go over it. And many kids do. So don't get, oh, she's being disrespectful. It's more, what will help her here? Some of it will be accept that she'll continue shouting, that she won't speak, that she'll close her door on her room. This is going to pass. So she doesn't have to be happy. So this may give you a little bit more freedom or a little bit of reassurance that you haven't achieved the impossible. She's not going to be happy. She's going to scowl. She's going to hate you on and off. It happens. And it's not for lack of skill from you. This is the difficulty of refeeding and of the illness. So there's a level of acceptance. She's not happy.
What do you actually say to reduce the violence or the aggression? How do you draw a line in the sand and set your limits? I'll cover that in some other clips. An eating disorder usually makes our children extremely tense, so they become quite hostile, quite rude, aggressive. So it's normal, it will pass, as I explain in another clip. But still, you have to survive while this is going on. So I'm going to share with you an audio message I gave to a mother who was really struggling with her daughter's behavior. It was affecting her mood. So here's my message to this mum, with her permission, of course. Hello, darling. I'm looking at your email and I'm reading the bit where it says, I keep trying, but I also don't want to be a wet blanket. She is asking for rights to work, rights to art class. Do I tell her no, or do I continue to be treated like shit and continue saying, I want us to be kind and polite to each other? You don't want to be retaliating, saying, because you're so horrible to me, I am not going to give you a ride. That would just increase the opposition, the battle. it's tit for tat, so you won't get very much in your connection with that. And of course, your connection is your ultimate tool. So for me, it would be very much like what you're saying. Hey, I want us to be kind and polite to each other. Please, could you say that again in polite language? And please lower your tone of voice so I can really hear you. I am interested. So my choice of words is quite deliberate. I don't want to say, don't be rude. And I don't want to say, please don't shout. It's always preferable to state what you positively want and to be precise about it. That way there's no argument about, I'm not being rude, I'm not shouting. Now, that doesn't always work because she's got her own state of stress, of extreme stress and distress. So she could continue treating you awfully. Okay, you could say, I did this a few times, darling, you know, I was going to take you to XYZ this afternoon. We've had a difficult interaction and now I'm feeling really low. I'm not in the mood. I'm going to give myself a break. It's not a punishment. It's not retaliation. I get it that it's disappointing for you. You really wanted me to do this thing with you. And I'm really, really not in the mood. I want to sit down in my armchair and read a nice book. And, you know, let's see how it goes tomorrow. Okay? I'm sorry if it's really disappointing for you. So I'm going to some trouble to describe the positive things that I want, which is rest and enjoying a book, and also making it quite explicit that this is not retaliation. This is not, you're a bad person and I want you to pay. And it's not, you're a bad person, see how you've hurt me. Our children naturally blame themselves for everything. They feel really ashamed of who they are, of what they do. They are fearful of the effect they're having on all of us. And it doesn't stop them from behaving appallingly. In fact, it probably makes it worse because they're acting from a place of high stress. There's a psychological model of human interactions, which is called the Karpman drama triangle, where we can get ourselves in a loop of one or the other at different times being the victim or the persecutor or the rescuer. Can you imagine how you get into those three and how your child gets into those three? So you want to be able to step out of that by being assertive about your needs without being blaming. And as an extra bonus, you are modeling for your child a way of behaving much more healthily in human relationships. Self-compassion for yourself. It's a horrible time when we're getting such an onslaught, and definitely get compassion from others. This was a stage where I used to see a counselor once a week. Yeah, I really benefited from that because it's absolutely exhausting to be hated. And your strength will come from staying an open, loving, generous person, not closing off and saying, you know, I can hardly bear this and she's a horrible person. That's not going to get you anywhere. So that's my kind of doormat prevention suggestion. This clip may be useful to you if your child is yelling. And how can you de-escalate? How can you give them empathy and connect with them? Hi, my darling. I'm looking at the bit where you wrote to me that your daughter was yelling, I can do whatever I want. And then it was, get out of my room. And, you know, you just couldn't soothe her and you couldn't get the connection that you wanted. Which happens a lot because our children are very, very stressed. You know, they're not having a great time. We can't make everything okay for them. There is a level of acceptance and sadness around that. And of course, that's why we're so desperately trying to give them our compassion, to make it more bearable for them. There is something I can suggest, which is de-escalation along with validating what matters to her and validating her emotions. It would start with you matching the intensity of her yelling so that she really feels understood. It's not just nice words from me. It's really, whoa, I get it. And it would be, Of course you want to do whatever you want. Of course, I'd get that. Of course you do. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to do what they want to do? I get it. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off high intensity and I'm trying to agree with her. Of course you want to do whatever you want. So with an empathic response, I'm always looking for a way of saying yes. It doesn't mean that I agree with what she's asking for, what she wants, and it doesn't mean that I agree with her beliefs, which may be very distorted, but I am totally seeing how it would be like that for her. So that's where the yes comes in. Yes, of course you want to do whatever you want. Who wouldn't? And then I might start gradually lowering my tone of voice, and that's called de-escalation, and it's modeling a lower intensity state in the hope that she will follow you. And leave some silences, because she might say something that you can then respond to, hopefully with a, yes, I get it, of course. If she doesn't say anything and you've left a little bit of breathing space, I might say something like, here you are at the age you're at, and here you're being told a lot of what to do. You've got your parents in charge of your food. I would have hated that when I was your age. I can really imagine it's incredibly frustrating. Yeah, I get it. And then I might ask her to say more. So that would be like, tell me more. Tell me more. I want to be on your side. I want to understand you. I don't want you to be suffering this all alone. Or I might go on with a direct request, which would be, and at the same time, you need the next spoonful. And at the same time, you need to finish this dish. Or, and I really wanted to go and see this therapist now. It's time to go. Come in the car now. So I would either continue with the empathy if this is a situation where we can talk, or I would get on with what needs to be done. Or distraction. Should we go and do something nice? Something distracting and connecting. How about we go to the shops? We said we needed to get you some new shoes, so how about we do that? Come on, it will change the mood. Come on, let's get your coat on. Let's go. I want to help you a little bit more on when your child is behaving with a lot of aggression. I'm talking with parents who have done a lot of, it has to be done, I'm really sorry, you need this food, you need to blah, blah, blah. And the girl is just shouting at them and she's kicked them. It seems to just make her worse. So I'm going to explain connect before you correct. And I'm going to attempt to demonstrate a way of showing very, very strong empathy before giving explanations and reassurance. And I'll also talk about when your child ends up in tears, which is a good thing. I get it. You hate this. Really, really repeating what she's saying. Repeat it back rather than you need this, it's good for you, we have to do this. That's part of correct. The connect is, I have heard you. This is bloody awful for you. Tell me more, but lower your voice, because I'll make it better if you can tell me more, but in a lower voice and without kicking me. So that's the de-escalation bit. The dad is now saying, yeah, but what happens when she just then adds on more abuse? When I say, tell me more, I want to hear you. Okay, you're still cross, but I'm still your dad. I want to understand you. You're all on your own here. Screaming and shouting. You're so distressed. Tell me, I'm your dad. I want to understand you. This empathy, very strong empathy, it's not soft. It's very much matching her tone. The hope is that by feeling heard and understood, because you've repeated these things that she's saying, that she will feel less threatened, and another kind of truth will come from her, a self-connection. And the self-connection might be shouting, or it might be tears, and it would be something like, my life is awful, you don't understand. And I cover that in another clip. happens when your child has been really aggressive, there's been a big meltdown, abuse, you've given empathy, and then you're getting tears, maybe shouting about how awful my life is. I'm talking to a mother who feels terrible when that happens because she really suffers for her daughter, and she tries to then explain herself. You need it, your heart needs it, we have to do this, food is medicine, and so on. And the mother has the lovely insight that what she's really doing is explaining herself rather than listening to her daughter in her distress.
It'll sound stupid or cruel what I'm saying, but if you can bring her to tears, great. When she's in tears, she's reflecting on the awfulness of her situation, and she's able to say, I've done all this to fit in and I still don't fit in. Grief. The grief is what is going to lead her to get your help and get better.
The girl is saying, you're making my life worse. Every time you stop me running, you're making me more miserable. And the parents are explaining why they have to stop her running, about her heart, etc. And then the girl just shouts louder about how awful they are and how they are making her life terrible.
So really practice we are. It really sucks. I wish I didn't have to do it.
So you're not jumping into reassurance, you're not jumping into justifying yourself and why you're doing it, you're not jumping into medical or scientific explanations, you're empathizing with, this really sucks. I am so sorry that your life is so hard, in whatever tone of voice matches hers, so she really feels hurt. So it could be, I'm sorry, this is really, really hard for you. And then you'll see if she self-connects more, becomes a little bit more wiser, or if you want to move on to distraction, let me help you, let's go and do something nice. You can't take away the pain of your son or daughter. The treatment is not easy, the illness is cruel. You can't fix it. You can offer your love and your understanding, your desire to understand more, and that in itself is incredibly supportive. Human beings can bear a lot when they know that they're not alone and that people care for them.
How about the situation where a child is hysterical, very upset, maybe directly after a meal, and the parents really want to come in and check that their child is not harming themselves, and they want to help soothe their child, but they don't know what to do because they're being told to get out of the room.
Yeah, and it's your job as parents. Yeah. It could be, darling, I know you hate us coming into your room. I'm going to just stick my head through. I'm going to sit on the ground just to check that you're safe. And it's very assertive. Get out of it. Yeah. Do you know, I'm not even going to look at you. I'm just going to turn my head away. You need your privacy. I get it. And at the same time, I need to make sure you're safe. So yeah, when I left mine for 5 minutes, I said, I'm not abandoning you. I'm going to come and check on you in 5 minutes. I knew she was safe at that stage. Now, we had one incident where she'd locked herself in the bathroom in the early days, and I didn't know if she would be safe. And we kind of didn't handle it well because we broke the door down, which added to this sense of chaos.
Yeah.
So my advice to parents is take locks off doors so that you can go in with what I've just modeled. But in that case, I think I could have said, I want to know you're safe. You're locked in the bathroom. I want to know you're safe. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah.
You might have just kept her talking and said, okay, now I want you to unlock the door. So a direct prompt. I want you to unlock the door so that I can just stick my head in for a second and see that you're safe. Please do it. Come on, darling, please unlock the door. You know, but I assume that if I'd kept her talking, I would have known she's safe. And then bring her down. Bring her down.
Parents become experts at calming their child, at reducing anxiety. You become stressbusters, anti-anxiety, coping skills coaches. Why? What are the benefits? Well, when your child knows that you are good at helping them feel calmer, they are probably more ready to take on a task that tends to make their stress go up. And as most of eating disorder treatment involves doing the thing that you fear, it's really useful for parents to become proficient at calming skills. You'll use them, for example, before, during, and after meals, during a challenge outing to a restaurant, when your child is scared of meeting a friend, when they're feeling desperate to exercise or purge, when they are getting stressed about schoolwork, or having a meltdown about how they feel fat. Also, I'm guessing that at present, when your child feels that horrible, horrible sense of anxiety rising within, the only way they have of calming themselves is to restrict food, or go off and do some exercise, or purge, or self-harm. Feeling anxious or panicky is truly awful. People say they'd rather be severely depressed than anxious. So it's understandable that your child will do anything that works for them right away. When you coach your child to use other strategies, and when they see how quickly this can work, you're giving them tools for recovery and tools for life. It's also empowering for you as a parent to know you can calm your child. Sometimes you'll be surprised that they've gone from anxious to relaxed in just a couple of minutes, especially if you intervened before anxiety had risen to big panic meltdown level. Knowing that you can help your child cope makes you ready to take risks, to drive progress. It may mean that you stop labeling your child with some level of irritation as clingy, and to be grateful that for a while you are supporting them in a way that only parents can. So in this audio collection, I'm giving you a whole lot of clips with tips for calming. You can find them all by searching for keywords calm or anxiety. Some are to do with empathy and calming phrases. Some are about distraction. Some are about using the body's senses, touch, smell, movement, and so on. Until we learned these super skills, most of us have had to rely on logical explanations. Just calm down. There's no reason to stress out about this issue. Just do this. Why don't you do that? And we found that rarely works. So I'm going to tell you more about how the nervous system works, the unconscious cues of safety that you can use, and I hope you'll find successes as you expand your repertoire. What drives anxiety or fear or panic? I'm going to tell you a bit about the nervous system. A very simplified explanation, but good enough for our purposes. So you know it's not all in the mind, and you're less tempted to say, calm down, there's nothing to worry about. This is all in your head. Can't you see that you just need to do X, Y, Z? The biological reality is that we come with an autonomic or automatic nervous system that's designed to detect threat and to prioritize our immediate safety. Yes, the threat may be all in our head, but the nervous system can't tell the difference between real or imagined. It's designed to prioritize safety, not intelligent reflection. So once it detects the cue for a threat, the sympathetic branch of the nervous system more or less shuts out our wise, logical prefrontal cortex because smart thinking is just too slow. And instead, it engages the quick reactions of our limbic brain. For instance, you might have heard about how the amygdala are activated when there's danger. Now, a whole load of physiological and mental reactions kick into action. Think of times you've been fearful. Public speaking is a big one for many people. Did stress disrupt your breathing, your stomach, your bowels, your heart rate, your sweating, the sense that you may faint or die? And did your thoughts take you to wild and crazy places? When we're in a state of fight or flight, we catastrophize, we judge others, and we disconnect from them. They could be a danger to us, so it's simpler to label everyone as bad and stupid And we also judge ourselves. We think we are worthless and shameful, though we can also go into grandiosity. We are so much better than all these idiots out there. And these thoughts confirm that there is a threat around us. And this locks us into a state of fight, flight, or freeze until something indicates to our nervous system that the threat is gone. So our task as parents is to give our child's nervous system signals, cues that there is no threat, they are safe. Whenever we see our child acting up with aggression or avoidance or running away, safety cues are the priority. That's what's going to move your child out of fight or flight, and now the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system can operate and bring back access to the whole brain, including the wise prefrontal cortex. This state is often called the rest and digest system. When we're deep in this state, we are calm and contented, and we feel the world is good and safe, and we're able to reason and make wise decisions. For our child, moving from fight, flight, freeze to a calm state is a massive relief. And it's so reassuring to know there are techniques that really work to speed up the transition. You're building trust and connection and inner resources every time you guide your child in this process. How can you tell when your child is in fight, flight, or freeze? If you get quick at recognizing this, at labeling it, you can use your wise brain to help them skillfully, rather than you yourself going into a state of fear or frustration. If your child is trying to run out of the house or out of the car, obviously that's flight. If your child is using aggressive behavior, obviously that's fight. Your child is not being bad. It's their nervous system doing what it does when it detects anything that it interprets as a threat, and you can help your child regulate back to stability. We're familiar with some of the signs of fear, but some are so extreme it can unsettle us. For example, you may feel out of your depth when your child says really weird, deluded things, or when they look and sound like something out of that movie, The Exorcist. That possessed look, the absent eyes, the growly voice. And really, it's all just physiological, all about the wiring of the nervous system, all clues that they're just temporarily in fight or flight, and you can guide them to a calmer state. The state of freeze is the least obvious one to interpret, well, for me at least. I've been with stressed out parents, and in retrospect, I missed the signs. Or rather, I misinterpreted what I saw as, this person doesn't seem to care. The freeze state is where the nervous system goes to when it's sensed that fight or flight will not work. It's a rather desperate form of protection, which you may have seen in some animals when they can't outrun a predator. If you've experienced a brief traumatic event where time slowed down and you were there but also not there, you were probably being protected by a freeze response. When our children are at the worst of their malnourishment, I think they're in that state a lot of the time. So what are the signs? Usually a blank, expressionless face. The body goes either floppy or rigid. The person looks shut down, blank, unsmiling, vague, unresponsive to their environment. They can become mute. They may not feel anything at all. They're numb and dissociated from their body. But there may also be a sense of helplessness and hopelessness, or confusion or brain fog. It's useful for you to detect this state because your child probably needs extra gentleness and cues that they are safe and loved. This is really not a time to get impatient with them. Even though they look blank, their state of fear is probably even greater than if they were screaming and acting out. What makes the nervous system class something as a threat, and how does it decide that the threat has passed? Or what brings you or your child to a state of fight, flight, or freeze, and what makes that pass? Well, first of all, the threat may be a real physical danger to life. A biting dog, a speeding car, and from internal cues like there's not enough food, my body isn't functioning as it should. So nutrition is going to help in the long term. The sense of threat can pass in a couple of minutes when there's no new worrying information coming in. So our physiology just reverts back to, okay, everything's normal again. If you've heard that emotions rise and then fall like a wave, that's why. Now, how about threats that are less real, that come more from our interpretations? Well, we get a sense of calm or danger from others. If you look nervous, your child gets nervous too. What else? Anything which endangers deep human needs brings a sense of threat. A big one is our need for connection, because we cannot survive alone. Unfortunately, your child may be quick to sense a threat of disconnection just from your body language. More on that in another clip. And most crucially, we humans get threatened by our own thoughts, our internal critic, worrier, catastrophizer, exaggerator. Our chatterbox is designed to alert us to potential dangers, but unfortunately, it can bring us into a spiral of self-perpetuating fear. Assume that your child is burdened by a constant stream of thoughts that lock them into a state of threat. In summary, the main principles of calming rest on how you can remove the sense of threat. Can you change the physical, external circumstances? Obviously, nutrition is a crucial part of that. Can you show love and calm so that your child gets unconscious messages of connection and safety? And can you redirect your child's thoughts to move away from some stuck negative looping? Lots of audios here with practical ways of doing all that. When your child is anxious, reasoning or lecturing or educating generally don't work. That's because the brain is in fight, flight, or freeze mode, which is designed for immediate safety, not for slow, measured reasoning. Access to the reasoning, logical, wise prefrontal cortex is kind of shut off. So remember, connect before you direct. Keep the reasoning talk for when your child has moved to a calmer state. Having said that, there may be a role for a firm, authoritative statement from you with a clear instruction or a reframe or a bit of sanity or reassurance. Think of the panic you might feel if your apartment or office block was on fire. Ear-piercing alarm bells are ringing, smoke is coming out of nearby windows, everyone is screaming, and a firefighter comes in and says, "You're safe. The fire is contained in the next compartment. The stairway will be clear for the next 10 minutes. Down you go." That's useful, right? So with your child, while they're super anxious, a few sane words might help, such as, "Okay, so you're worried that the therapist will think you're stupid? I can assure you that is not going to happen. This therapist knows all about the kind of stress you're going through." Or, "You're ready for the exam. You've done enough revision." But on the whole, reassurance and logic are not your first tools. A few more don'ts around what to say. Don't say, "Calm down," as that can feel extremely unsympathetic. But you can say, "I'm going to help you feel calmer." Catch yourself starting any sentence with, "At least you're," like, "Sure, your flat has burned down and you've lost everything that matters to you, but at least you'll get insurance money." Lots more on compassionate communication in this audio collection. And beware of making deals, making promises while your child is not in a logical place and you yourself are scared. Chances are that any deal you make will be a bad one at this stage. So you can say, we'll work it out later when everyone is calm again. You might want to plan ahead and prepare some calming tools. Make a mental note of a couple that appeal to you, or actually try some out with your child when they're feeling okay. They may not want to collaborate, so it's then up to you to remember 1 or 2 soothing strategies. And when your child's anxiety is starting to rise, be quite assertive in using them. By being assertive, I mean do it with them. For instance, rather than telling your child, breathe, you could say, okay, we're going to breathe together. Trust me, this will help. Breathe in with me and breathe out with me. And again. While you're planning to use a number of stress-busting tools, of coping tools, consider creating a quiet corner or putting together a toolbox. You could gather the materials that you plan to use, like a stress ball, a soft blanket, lavender oil, a music playlist, or some helpful phrases written on pretty cards, or reminders to listen to your audiobook, or go get some ice cubes. I wonder if your child might have a card or object that they can show you when they feel bad and want your help, and it's just too hard to talk and explain. When your child is distressed, watch your own body language and facial expression and your tone of voice. Even if you say all the right things, it's the unconscious cues that your child's nervous system will pick up. Have you seen nature programs where one antelope raises its head in alarm and how instantly the whole pack is alert, ready to run? We're programmed to get our safety cues off each other. Happily, calm is contagious as well. So slow down, do some self-compassion, use all your calming skills on yourself, and display the body language and tone of voice which best corresponds to, I'm your wise parent and I'm not worried about what's happening to you. It's going to pass and I know how to help you with that. So what to avoid? Looking anxious or cross, having your arms folded, having your hands on your hips, towering over your child, pointing your finger at them, allowing your voice to become shrieky or cross. All these are cues to your child's unconscious that there is a problem. There really is a danger because you look scared, or they're in danger because you're judging them. So your child's nervous system heightens the threat level and keeps them in fight, flight, or freeze. It's not easy because our children can see even a neutral face, even a slightly raised eyebrow, as a signal that we blame and judge them. I learned from my child wailing, "You're cross with me." And I presume I also asked my husband for feedback. And fake it till you make it. As you notch up a few successes at calming your child, you will genuinely feel calmer yourself next time that they get anxious. It's great when your child realizes they can count on you to lead them to more calm. One tip that might come in handy is ask your child, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is really calm and 10 is top level of distress? Or instead of distress, you could say anxious or fearful or stressed out or freaked out or some other synonym that your child doesn't find patronizing. Then you use your soothing technique, and it might only take a couple of minutes, and then you check again. Okay, where are you now on that scale of 1 to 10? If it's gone down by a point or 2, you could then repeat whatever you were doing till the level is low enough that your child wants to get on with their life. If it doesn't go down, it gives you a good indicator to move on to another soothing technique. Sometimes when people feel better, they genuinely don't remember how awful they felt only a minute ago. I've experienced that myself in therapy. It's like, why am I wasting time on this issue? I don't have a problem with it. But we do remember the number, and it's so gratifying and reassuring for both of you to realize that some simple tool actually worked and that it worked fast. I'll say a little about breathing techniques for when your child is having an anxious or panicky spell. The breath is one of those things that alters as anxiety rises, as the body gets ready for fight or flight. Unfortunately, altered breathing can in turn increase a sense of anxiety. You're breathing fast and your nervous system goes, "Oh, there must be a reason for this. What should I be anxious about?" Luckily, the opposite is true as well. We can intentionally breathe as if we were calm, and that gives the nervous system the cues that we truly are calm. We can make good use of the two-way relationship between mind and body, whether it's by adopting a calm and confident posture or by breathing calmly. I could describe all kinds of techniques around breathing and all kinds of props like feathers, bubbles, shapes, and so on. This length of in-breath or out-breath, through the mouth, through the right nostril, through the left nostril. The thing is, I'm unclear which have been validated. If breathing exercises appeal to you, I suggest you search on YouTube for words like breathing, anxiety, panic, calm, parasympathetic nervous system, vagal tone, or vagus nerve. You can always try them out with your child at a quiet time and decide if they have a place in your toolbox. With my daughter, I kept things simple. I just breathed with her at whatever rhythm felt right at the time. To engage more of her attention and her senses, I added in a movement component. I instructed her to raise her arms light as a feather on the in-breath and to push back down with her hands on the out-breath, rather like in Tai Chi. I remember an occasion where we also had a gentle music playing. We were following a breathing YouTube, and within a couple of minutes she was experiencing some very welcome relief. So there's another idea. Have a piece of music ready on your phone or a video that your child finds helpful. For panic attacks, an internet search will bring up some specific breathing techniques, and they might just be fantastic and very much worth trying, especially if you are calm and assertive in guiding your child. And be aware that your child might momentarily be extra anxious if you ask them to pay attention to their breathing. They might be gulping in air because they feel they can't breathe and that they're going to faint or die. If the breathing technique stops them from doing that, they've really got to trust you. If breath work is not starting to work within a minute or two, remember there are plenty of other panic-reducing techniques, such as those using movement or touch or distraction. Plenty of those in this audio collection. Somatic work, anything involving the body, can be really helpful to help calm someone and move away from fear. We're not just heads on a body, we have a body, and tension can get really stuck in there. So one stress-busting tool is to get your child to move. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to allow compulsive exercise or movement that's going to compromise health or weight gain. It can be small movements. So during a difficult meal, you might just prompt your child to stretch up with you and perhaps wiggle their shoulders. Do it with your child, model it. How about a clapping game that will add an element of distraction or humor? Outside meal times, going for a stroll together can help if it's medically safe. With someone who likes dancing or has a particular skill associated with a sport, you might practice together one skillful movement. On the internet, you'll find some specific movements or postures that are said to diffuse anxiety. I haven't researched which may or may not have any scientific basis, but I imagine they'll do no harm if you want to try them. I'll tell you a little story of a time I helped a friend who was having a really anxious spell. This is to remind you that calming skills can work for any age and to give you the confidence to follow your instincts rather than try and remember all the advice you read or hear. So with this friend, I got her started walking around the room with me. And right away, I had an instinct to add an extra focus, to make each step really smooth and stylish, tango style, especially as this friend likes dancing. Now, when the nervous system moves from sympathetic to parasympathetic, from stress to calm, you can get some yawning and some release of wind. And this is exactly what was happening, even as we were trying to do this super elegant tango walking. Soon we were giggling like school kids, tears streaming, because what's funnier than people breaking wind? Well, I think it's funny. So there are many ways to help someone move away from fear, and as you hear me describe various principles in these audios, please also feel free to make things up as you go along. A hug or physical touch can do the work of 1,000 carefully chosen words of empathy. I bet that when your child is anxious, your first instinct is to hug them, to hold them. There's good reasons for that. Our nervous system, which is on the lookout for signals of danger or safety, tends to interpret hugs as, okay, we're safe, we're being nurtured, all's good. And you get a surge in soothing, bonding hormones like oxytocin. During the COVID lockdowns, there was much talk about the need for hugs, for physical contact, even among people who didn't think that they were the touchy-feely kind. I propose that you check with your child, may I give you a hug or may I hold your hand? Often our children say no because anxiety has made touch feel threatening instead of connecting. They may even need extra space. This can leave you rather bereft because you really need the physical contact. So just notice that so that you can be really non-blaming and say, that's okay, I'm glad I checked, and move on to another calming strategy. Sometimes your child will recoil at you touching their body, but you can stroke their hair. It's worth checking. Or if you have pets in the house, go ahead and drop the pet in your child's arms. I'm thinking a warm furry dog rather than a goldfish. If you do get the go-ahead for a hug, go for a yummy, long, calm, mostly silent hug. Trust that the body is releasing tension and sorting itself out during that time. There are people who hug with a stiff little pat, pat, pat on your back. Check if you're doing anything like that and allow yourself to melt into the other person and really connect. This is good for calming your child, and I also recommend it in a strong couple. You're going through massive stress, and a long, still hug might save you 2 hours of exhausting discussions. You can also coach your child to do a self-hug, so they can cross their arms over to hug themselves. They might rock, or you can model how to do a downward stroking movement of the upper arms. There's also bilateral stimulation used in therapy called EMDR, well validated for trauma, and you alternatively tap each upper arm, right, left, or each side of your upper chest, and you can also alternatively tap each thigh. Your child can do it for themselves, or you can tap on them. When you're wondering how to help your child with their anxiety, never underestimate the power of your kind presence. Just being there, close to your child, or in the same house, or on the other end of a phone, it's powerful. This is why, with a child who gets very anxious at night, it makes sense for many parents to bring their child into their bedroom or to lie with their child until they fall asleep. I remember a parent telling me that their psychiatrist, presumably Freudian trained, was appalled that a parent should share a bedroom with their teenager. It's lucky that the mother followed her instincts as she caught her daughter mid-suicide attempt. Parents can worry that their child is clingy, that's the word they use, and cannot bear to be alone and follows them around the house. It can be very tiring when the child is clinging to just one parent, so see if you can empower another adult to be just as effective as you are. Sometimes I hear of a therapist who tells the parents to leave a so-called clingy child alone. The idea is that the child will learn to deal with their own anxiety, will learn autonomy. To me, that's an instruction of rupture, of disconnection, and I do find it quite appalling. You wouldn't treat a victim of kidnap or a cancer patient this way. We are not talking about a well child ready to explore the world, but a malnourished, ill, highly distressed one. Surely there is no more crucial time to need those who are supposed to love and help us. Here's an important word to meditate on: interconnection. Human beings are designed for interconnection. Indeed, can you remember the levels of fear and distress around the COVID lockdowns when people were required to stay in complete isolation? Yes, your child will eventually enjoy autonomy. Well, here's a concept for you. To have autonomy, you need interconnection, because interconnection is a basic human need. So, while your child needs your presence, while they need to know that they are safe in your company, that you can help them when they need help, be present. When your child is panicky, it's likely that their thoughts are quite horrible and catastrophic, and so believable that your child loses touch with reality. And how do we know reality? From our physical senses. A well-known tool for panic attacks is to redirect someone's attention by engaging their 5 senses. So you ask your child to name 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can feel, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and 1 thing they can taste. Personally, that's far too much for me to remember, and you might do just fine with only some of those. So you could say, I want you to find 5 blue things in this room. Go ahead, trust me, this will help. What can you see that is blue? Let's do it together. There's that blue picture frame. What else? For the sense of touch, there is, of course, stroking, the feel of feathers, fur and soft things, self-hugs and tapping, which I'm describing in another audio. I made up my own involving a very light touch. I used it a couple of times when my daughter was getting quite panicky and it brought her down really fast. I said quite assertively, okay, I'm going to help you. You're safe. I'm going to write a letter in your hand. Can you guess what it is? No peeking. With my finger, I drew a letter. I was a bit playful to show I wasn't scared, and she was just intrigued enough to pay attention and make a guess. After 2 or 3 letters, she'd come back to herself. For the sense of smell, some find it useful to use lavender oil or tea bags in their stress-busting kit. I've noticed personally that at times I've been distressed, I've been drawn to the perfume section of department stores with a real longing to find a scent that will soothe and accompany me throughout the day. Some parents really swear by their little bottle of rescue remedy, which ticks the boxes for smell, taste, and just a splash of brandy. Joking apart, regarding the sense of taste, a parent told me that she used Warhead's sour candy spray. No idea what it is, but maybe you do. Or a drop of spicy hot sauce. For the sense of hearing, there are of course all kinds of soothing musics. Your child might have their favorites, or there are calming apps with a big repertoire of music and of guided meditations. I wonder if together you could play at being the conductor or play air guitar so as to really bring your attention to what you're hearing. Consider also music that has a strong, steady beat, and you might also encourage your child to tap or move to the beat. That can feel quite grounding. It's useful to feel the ground beneath your feet when you are disconnected from reality. Remember also the power of movement to unlock a rigid state of anxiety and fear. Add that to the 5 senses that ground people to reality. Guide your child to do a smooth or rhythmical movement with or without attention to the breath, or just insist your child puts on their shoes to go for a stroll with you, or comes to the bathroom to brush their teeth, or goes to the freezer to fetch some ice cubes. Here's a stress-busting tool that can come in useful if your child is wanting to hit you or hit themselves. You can firmly tell them, no hitting, that is not okay. So that's you stating your limit. You're doing your job as a parent, and you need to trust that however distressed they are, they have the capacity to keep their behavior within limits. They probably behave well in school, right? After stating a firm limit, usually we use de-escalation, modeling a calmer voice and body language, and maybe giving a precise instruction like, instead of kicking, use your voice and tell me what you're needing. Now, an alternative to de-escalation to a mellow state, you could also give your child something to do that will defuse their restless, anxious, furious energy. So you might say, here's a cushion. You can bash the cushion as much as you like. I'll get one for myself as well. I remember with my daughter, I was prompting her to stamp on a cushion. And I was doing the same on another cushion, and maybe also modeling some amount of swearing at the cushion, because I thought she should see that emotions are allowed, but not hitting or swearing at me. It felt a bit silly. I was making a bit of a game of it. And after a couple of stomps, she just got quite half-hearted about it. All that nervous energy had just left her, and she shrugged and we moved on. On a similar note, you might get a squeeze ball, a stress ball. You can buy them, or you can look up how to make one from a balloon that you fill with flour. That in itself might be a soothing activity to do with your child, to show that you're both actively working on tools to help them feel better. Have a look also at fidget toys, things to keep your child's hands occupied, or at least one hand, while perhaps the other hand keeps hold of the fork or the spoon to keep the meal going. I've also heard of giving the young person paper and crayon and asking them to choose a color that expresses their feelings and filling the page with it. By the time the page is full of furious red or black scribbles, the person has probably calmed down. If these ideas don't sound useful for your child, keep listening. Lots more audios from me here. Ice cubes or cold water can be useful when your child is getting very agitated or having a panic attack. Walk them to the sink or to the freezer and prompt them to splash cold water on their face or hold ice cubes in their hands. Or you might gently stroke their face with an ice cube. My understanding of why this works for many people is that the stark change in sensation literally brings them back to their senses. When people are panicking, they're caught up in an unreal, nightmarish world where talking and reason have very little impact, So the best tool to bring them back to reality can be through the senses, through the body. Some people learn to avoid the urge to self-harm by flicking an elastic band or a hairband that they wear around their wrist. There's disagreements around this particular strategy, so I'm just mentioning it in the context of bringing the attention back to the physical senses. When your child needs your help to calm down, consider putting on some music. As they may not share your taste, it could be wise to plan a playlist ahead of time. I remember once explaining to my teen daughter the principles of mindfulness, and in particular, really being in the present moment. I spent a good 5 minutes describing all the steps, and then she said, "Oh, you mean like when I listen to music?" So if your child, like most teens, engages with music, remember to use that to shift their mood or to shift them away from an anxious state. You might need to guide them if they choose music that makes them worse. You might need to experiment a little, whether the music needs to be calm and fluid or with a heavy grounding beat. I suggest you combine the power of music with some movement. Your child will cringe if you start dancing, but they may follow some of your actions, and if you both get a laugh, that's all for the better. If your child tends towards anxiety or has anxious moments, such as at bedtime, then together you might hunt for a calming app that they like. These usually provide a wide choice of music and of guided meditations. So keywords to search for an app might be calm, grounding, sleep, or meditation. Be aware that there are different kinds of meditations. I can't imagine that they're all helpful to an anxious person who is harassed by terrible thoughts, or who's disconnected from their body, or who's struggling with "who am I?" types of questions. So I suggest that you guide your child towards meditations that have a component of self-compassion or kindness or gratitude. Audiobooks can be really useful to keep your child's mind engaged when it would otherwise send a flood of anxious thoughts. My daughter fell asleep to the Harry Potter audiobooks. You can set sleep timers on most audiobook apps or on sleep apps or on the laptop. I suggest that you set the sleep apps up on a device other than your child's phone so that they don't have their phone with them during the night. By the way, are you allowing your child to keep their smartphone at night? If so, I suggest you be brave and change that for just one night so you can see for yourself how much stimulation and sleep deprivation your child's anxious brain might be getting without you even realizing it. As you sit by your child's phone, I bet you'll see that screen light up every few minutes with conversations going on into the small hours, even on a school night. This series on calming skills would not be complete without reminding you of the wonderful power of empathy. Plenty on that in this audio collection. How you listen, how you validate, how you show kindness and non-judgment, how you don't jump to fix a problem, but you give the person time and space to feel whatever they are feeling while in your loving company. All these things bring the person a sense of connection, and the nervous system moves them out of fight, flight, or freeze. And there is a place also for problem solving, to bring clarity and calm, and to see about addressing needs. There's even a place for repairing a relationship, more on that in other audios, and for reiterating the limits of what is acceptable behavior or not. Just don't do it too soon. When it comes to calming skills, you probably need to remember, connect before you direct. To help soothe your child while they're in overwhelm, You might set up a quiet, safe, soothing space where there will be less sensory stimulation. Some people self-soothe really well. Indeed, they prefer to be left alone. If your child wants to be left alone in their bedroom, and if you know that that usually works, then give them time alone, as long as you know they're not self-harming. This is not a time-out punishment kind of thing, and because our children assume that they're unworthy and that we want to abandon them, you could make sure you tell your child that you care, you really feel for them, and you'll check up on them soon. The calm space might be a corner of your living room, maybe an area with soft pillows, a blanket making up a tent and keeping out bright lights, and perhaps this is where you keep a kit of whatever usually helps your child. A calm space probably needs to be away from siblings or anyone who threatens the peace and safety of the moment. While you're learning tools to help calm your child, you might be interested in EFT, that's Emotional Freedom Technique, also often called tapping. There seems to be a lot of research to validate EFT for trauma, though as I record this, EFT does not feature in recommended trauma treatments in the same way as EMDR does. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I think the two methods are quite similar, and for your purposes, where you're just looking for something that might quickly soothe your child, I can't see the harm in trying EFT or EMDR self-help tappings. I welcomed the help of an EFT therapist for quite a while, just because for me it worked. In a few minutes, my level of distress on a particular issue could just fade away, often permanently. EFT tapping is simple to learn off the internet. Basically, you're going tap, tap, tap onto particular points of the body. Most of them are on the face. You could practice it so your child taps on themselves, or when they're distressed, you could ask for their permission to tap on them. It looks pretty stupid, so your child might only engage with the technique when they remember that on previous occasions their distress level went down very, very quickly, which is why you could ask before and after tapping where they are on a distress scale of 1 to 10. My daughter thought tapping looked daft, so I only offered to do it when something super distressing had happened, like once when she'd had an accident which had bent a finger back and we were waiting for attention in the hospital. I was glad that she allowed me to tap on her because there's only so much you can do in a hospital waiting room, and within a few minutes she had reached a good level of calm. If you do learn EFT off the internet, you'll see that as you tap, you're supposed to speak out the negative thought or negative belief, and that's useful when you're doing therapy on a past trauma. But if you're tapping while your child is currently feeling terrible, tapping without words can work fine as well, so that makes it a little bit easier for you. A series on calming skills wouldn't be complete without mentioning medication. Sometimes our children's anxiety is so high that it's appropriate for a psychiatrist to review the situation and see if it's wise to prescribe a medicine. In the early days of refeeding, it's not uncommon for children to get prescribed an antipsychotic to take the edge off their distress around meals. Some of you will be appalled at the idea of using psychiatric drugs. Go ahead and ask all your questions. What are the side effects? How will your child be monitored? How will the medicines be dialed down, and when?
I'd like to offer you a little bit of help around the question of, am I fat? So this is really common with our children, obviously with an eating disorder, very, very frightened of the nourishment we're giving them, of usually they need to regain weight that they've lost and maybe more. So they're going, you're going to make me fat. Am I fat? How many more kilos are you going to make me gain? What's the weight target? I need to know the weight target. I put on weight too quickly. So there's all these questions, and we parents sometimes get rather twisted up, not knowing what to answer, and it is difficult. And we think that if we can give just the right answer, we'll make it okay, and our children will be okay gaining weight. And actually, it doesn't really work that way. Whatever we say, it's really hard for them anyway. The eating disorder is creating huge anxiety around this. So one thing that doesn't tend to work is assurances like, but you're not fat, you've lost a lot of weight, you're actually much too thin, you're skeletal. These kinds of things tend not to work. They might reassure your child for an hour or two, a day or two. I remember on one occasion, I was so glad because a dietitian had shown my daughter a growth chart and had shown her how she was only going to gain weight up to this level, which historically would still be lower than her normal growth curve, which is really a wrong thing to do. But anyway, that should at least have reassured my daughter. And yeah, my daughter was happy for one day. And the next day, the questions started all over again. Yeah, but how will I will still be too fat then. So offering reassurance by saying you're actually not fat, you're thin, that doesn't work. So I'm going to offer you some more suggestions for what to say, because I know these questions just keep coming and we feel a bit stuck with them.
Okay, so earlier I showed how when your child is wanting reassurance about, am I fat? Are you going to make me fat? How much more weight? I've explained how reassurance doesn't reassure. It doesn't reassure our children for very long at all. They keep on asking questions. Now, having said that, I want to give you lots and lots of options. And at one stage, when I didn't know as much as I know now, I did say to my daughter, A, you're not fat, and B, we're not going to make you fat. Now, this is really not recommended. It's a bit of a band-aid. It may help just for a short while. Okay, you're not going to make me fat. Great. Okay, then I'll eat. If it's going to help and you're in desperate straits, you're trying to keep your child out of hospital, get them to eat, you need all the tools. But the reason why it's really just a band-aid, it's very temporary, is that to really recover from an eating disorder, your child needs to embrace a completely different mentality where it's about health, it's about feeling great, it's about who you are as a whole person, not as a particular body shape. So if I say to my daughter, we're not going to make you fat, I'm giving her an implicit message that it's not okay to be fat. And really, that's not a great message. It's going to make her hang on to the idea of never going above a certain body weight. So it's much better to keep away from these messages if you can. If you really have to use, we're not going to make you fat, you're not fat, if you really feel you need that to save your child's life, to keep them out of hospital, to get the next meal in, then fair enough, just say it once a day maximum, because if you keep repeating it, you're going to see it doesn't reassure. If it works once a day, fair enough, but be on the alert as soon as you can. Move away from that message and start talking about health and life and goodness, which is what I'll cover in another clip.
Here's another clip among several on what you can do when your child is really anxious about their body shape. I'm fat or I'm not muscular enough. And this one, more specifically, is about how not to engage and not get drawn into circular, looping, endless conversations. Here's how it goes.
The standard advice is, I'm sorry, and we're not discussing weight. It's not helpful. Let's go and play a game. Because our children are asking for a rational explanation, but they can't take it. So wasting our time, just making them more and more upset by trying to give them what to them is the wrong answer.
You can say, my darling, I so would love to be able to soothe you and give you some reassurance. And I know from experience and everything that I know that engaging in this kind of talk is not going to do it. So let's move on. Let's go online and help me choose a present for Grandma's birthday.
Oh, it's not fair. You're not answering my question.
Sure, I get it. You would really like an answer. I'm sorry it's not helpful to try and answer this one. Look, can you come and help me on the computer, please? You're not answering, so that means you're going to make me fat. Come on, sweet, enough of this kind of talk. Come down and help me at the computer. So that's the most immediate thing for you to try, possibly the easiest tool that you can use. I would say that there's a bit of a process to this. So first time round, you're really acknowledging that they're wanting an answer and that they're hoping it will give them some information and mostly reassurance. And you're expressing regret that you know this won't work, so that's why you're not answering. So that's round one, which I demonstrated first. And then when you keep going, you make your answers shorter and shorter and more of a broken record. And when they keep coming back to these questions, you can be very short and say, sweetie, remember, it's not useful to discuss that. Whatever you do, you're doing it with kindness. If you can help it, you're not showing irritation, impatience, or judgment. You're being a wise parent who's moving on, who's distracting, who knows what is best. If you're in parent groups, this approach of we're not talking about it is the one that's the most commonly recommended. There are other ways which I'm covering in these audios. Obviously distraction, but also compassionate communication using empathy guesses or open questions. And I'll also mention when there's a role for rational, informational replies. So look out for those other tips.
Changing someone's attitude to their body shape might be the very last hurdle. Lots of other things might be working very well. Your child may be eating well, no more fear foods, very stable, but they still have an anxious view of their body. So don't be too impatient, and remember also that the normal population is really screwed up as well. So the bar is set pretty low, but that doesn't mean you can't be ambitious, even though it's not going to happen overnight. So what are your aims? I'm going to spell some of them out because we live in a society where we don't even know what's good anymore around food or body shape. So I think really worthwhile aims so that our children are happy, they're less likely to relapse. Those aims would be, look, you're going to get to the stage where you feel great in your body. You're not going to compare with others. You're not going to get buffeted around with the fashion on the size of this or the size of that. You're going to like yourself as you are and really appreciate what your body does for you. And you're going to discover that your body serves you really well. So you're going to have so much freedom and pleasure. You'll be eating what you like, while others, very sadly, are caught in a bind of constant restriction and checking. Is this healthy? Is this unhealthy? Is this too much? Is this naughty? Is this bad? You're going to be free from this. And obviously, you will never go on a weight loss diet. That would be a very high risk trigger for relapse, and you won't ever see the need for it anyway. What joy, what freedom. You're not going to follow diet fads, so-called healthy fads. You're going to be able to see that They're a load of unscientific nonsense. You're going to enjoy movement for pleasure, for well-being, not heavy exercising to build your body in some compulsive or needy way. You're going to get on with your life and enjoy life with food that gives pleasure, that nourishes, that makes you feel good, that is also there for celebration, and your body is going to be there to make you feel great. All that happens without attention to your waist or buttock measurements, without examining every photo that you're in, without comparing with other people's bodies. So you're going to reach a real joy with body and with food. Okay, so that's a general position. You may or may not want to speak to your child this way. I've prepared another audio clip where I suggest ways of talking to your son or daughter about these issues, about wellness and feeling good and trust us. So that's kind of the big picture aim. Some of this will happen because your child is better nourished and because they get used to the weight that you're bringing them to. Some of this will come from the repetition that they're eating and getting pleasure from it and losing their fear around it. They're also losing the habit of using exercise as a way of controlling what goes on in their body. Some of this will happen because you're showering them with kindness and empathy and they start feeling good in themselves. Your child may be offered some therapy around this, maybe towards the final bits of their treatment, but not necessarily. In some therapies, the model is that attitudes will change anyway with time. I think we parents have an important role throughout this treatment and beyond with our modeling your conversations or some very deliberate coaching. I'm going to guide you through this in other audios.
I'm still covering the question of, am I fat, when your child really is asking for a reassurance about fat and weight gain. So we've seen how it's probably not a good idea to go, no, you're not fat, or no, we're not going to make you fat. And we've seen how a good first step might be, sorry, darling, we're not going to talk about it. It's not useful. It's not helpful to talk about it. One way you can talk about it is to really go for the idea of well-being, of health, of happiness. So it would be something like, sweetie, your body will be right for you and you will grow and thrive. You'll be great. Or you could go along the lines of, what matters is how you're going to feel in your body, how you'll feel about your life, and that's going to be great. Another thing you could say would be, we're serving you what you need for what your body needs. Yeah, please trust us. It's okay. Or we're helping you rebuild your body. Yeah, for your health, for your happiness, for your well-being. That's what we're doing. Am I fat? Are you going to feed me too much? Sweetie, we're working towards healing your body and your brain. It's okay, trust us. It could be, you're going to make me fat. We're getting you ready for strength and energy so that, you can enjoy your holidays again, if you were on holidays, or so that you can be full of energy, go to school again, if they're off school. You might want to paint a bit of a picture of the future. So it might be like, you're going to make me fat. It could be, it's hard for you to imagine right now, but you are going to feel good in your body. You're going to love it. You're going to love how you look and how you feel. You might want to combine a little bit of education in that as well. So it could be, you're making me fat. Darling, it's so hard for you because this illness distorts your perceptions of your body, and it seems so real to you. Now, as your body gets re-nourished, your brain's going to get back to working really well, and all this will be much more peaceful for you. You might want to soothe your child with a little bit of normalizing and hope for the future. So it would be, you're making me fat. And it would be, with an eating disorder, it's really normal that at the start people really feel awful like you are, and it feels terrifying and uncomfortable, and you have all these thoughts about your body shape. And as people get better, all that passes, and people feel great, and they have confidence in themselves, and life is good. It might be impossible for you to imagine right now, but you're going to be happy and sparkly, and your life will be rich and interesting and fun. And you won't give all this so much thought. It'll just all come naturally. It'll all feel good. Trust me now. I know it's hard to believe. We're taking good care of you. So it might be that some of the positive visions you're painting of the future will drive your child crazy because they think you really don't understand them, and there's no way this future is going to be okay for them. So a bit of trial and error. On the whole, if none of this works, then you want to go back to, I'm really sorry. Let's not talk about it. Let's go and do something else. No, darling, it's not useful to talk about this now. Okay, let's go and whatever you have, distraction lined up. That's one way you can go. And there is another route which is more into the empathy and validation route, which I'll do in another clip.
Your child may get a spike in anxiety when you use words like, you need to put on weight, or this week you put on 0.5 kilo. So I've been trying to collect some synonyms, some alternative expressions that you could try. One is to replace you need to put on weight with you need to gain weight, or your weight needs to increase, or to go up. Maybe it's just me and this is just at the edge of my consciousness, but putting on weight reminds me of the language used by those trying to fat shame us. There is, of course, the word recovery, as in we're aiming for recovery weight. Your child might not care about recovery, so here are some more tips I've gathered from parents. The aim is to get your weight to match your height. Just so you're clear, that doesn't mean anything in terms of numbers. It's not like if you're 60th percentile height, you are only healthy if you are also 60th percentile weight. But the general impression that gives me is your weight is going to be what is needed for your height. Another one is we're aiming for your equilibrium weight, or your balance weight, or your steady weight. I guess that these might need a little explanation at first, like that's where your body will be in balance, so that you can eat freely and your body is stable or steady or in balance, and your mind is free to enjoy yourself. So I hope that these possible alternatives to you've put on weight will help you. We're looking at the situation where your child is very anxious or having a meltdown about, I'm fat, you're going to make me fat, how much fatter are you going to make me? So I've suggested various routes, and now I want to cover a route which is about empathy and validation. Now, we're never validating somebody's distorted thoughts. We're only validating their emotions, their unmet needs, their suffering, and what deeply matters to them. So to know what to validate, you kind of need to get into your child's shoes and think, what is it that makes them so anxious at the idea of being fat? Well, one answer is that their brain is malfunctioning at the moment. So it's a bit difficult around that. But there'll be some element of wanting to be safe somewhere in there. So you're trying to get to that, and you're trying to give empathy for it. It might seem really obvious that all that's happening is your child wants to be thin or wants to be super muscular. But I think that might be missing something a little bit more important to your child, more emotional. The desire to be thin or to be muscular is a kind of modern overlay. It gives a handy explanation to myself as I'm all in a confused state of mind because food makes me feel so awful and my body feels terrible. So I'm going to say, oh, of course, it's because I need to look fashionable, fashionably thin, fashionably muscular. But say in medieval days, the same kinds of feelings would come with the explanation of, I want to be pure, I want to be holy. So there's other stuff going on for our children, and if we can get to a little bit of it, then we can give empathy around that, which brings soothing, which reduces the anxiety, and may make your next meal easier. I think it's also really useful for any of us to grieve, to feel the sadness for things that we've done in a way which was really not effective, that we really tried to meet a need in a really ineffective way, and yet the need was so important and so valid. It can be really therapeutic to take time to feel sad about that and have someone by your side who understands that sadness. So that's why in your toolkit you might not want to stop at the kind, look sweetie, let's do something else. It's not useful to discuss your weight. I'm going to show you in some of the other audios how to use open questions or empathy guesses to invite your child to speak out their fears and even their worst beliefs. Now, that's not going to amplify the belief because it's in their head anyway. And once it's out, you can give empathy for the emotion or the need that's underlying, that's behind this belief. And usually that takes some of the power off the belief. It brings a sense of resolution, what you might see as a bit of common sense. Just to be clear, having this kind of conversation is useful if it leads to your child reflecting a little bit on themselves, being able to express what's going on deeper, and therefore getting some sense of being understood and therefore being soothed. If your child seems stuck in, I'm fat, I'm not muscular enough, I'm this, I'm that, and that's all that they can say, then this is not a good time to attempt any more compassionate talk. The most compassionate thing is to distract and try and get them to think about other things. But I hope that the other clips with open questions or empathy guesses will help you to get your child onto another level.
This clip is about having a connecting conversation using empathy and specifically open questions in response to your child's supercharged anxiety around their body shape. I'm fat, I'm too skinny, I'm not muscular enough. Why attempt to have a connecting, compassionate conversation around body shape? I explained that in another clip. The idea is to bring out worst beliefs, get to the emotions around it and what really deeply matters to your child. So one open question you can ask, which is a yes or no answer, would be something like, you seem to hate the idea of gaining weight. What is it about, my darling? Or you could say, what would it give you to stay as you are? Or what's the worst you're imagining? Or if it's about muscularity, you could say, what does it do for you as you imagine being more and more muscular? Hopefully what will come out is some level of self-awareness. For example, when I'm fat, my friends can bully me. So then you can bring out, okay, so it's about feeling safe from bullying. I can really understand how you would want to feel safe, my darling. Obviously, with an open question, you may get all kinds of responses. And in some of the other audio clips on the Am I Fat theme, I give you some more specific examples. Now, open questions are not always productive because the person is just too confused, too distressed to be able to zoom in on what's going on for them. So your child may go on and on about, I'm just fat, or I need to be fitter. If that's the case, then it's not useful to keep asking open questions, and you now have a choice whether you move on to distraction or whether you go for guesses. So you're going to make empathy guesses and suggest what might be going on for them, and then see if that means anything to them. I'm going to guide you through empathy guesses in some other audio clips, and I hope that will help you.
I want to offer you a little bit more help around the am I fat questions. Now, this audio is about making empathy guesses and having a compassionate exchange around issues to do with safety, bullying, fitting in. We're trying to go for the big issues, the deep stuff, to help your child reflect and feel understood, rather than stay at the very small, petty, anxious level of I'm fat or I'm not muscular enough. So in what follows, I'm making a whole load of empathy guesses, and that's really useful when your child isn't answering open questions, so you can prompt them with your guesses. And don't be attached to your guesses. They may be wrong. You're just trying to get your child to open up and reflect on what's going on for them. I'm giving you here a whole series of guesses, but you would only do one at a time and leave a pause and say, what do you think? Am I anywhere close? And if you're not anywhere close, hopefully your child will say, no, it's not that, but it's XYZ. And then fantastic, you've got a conversation going and your child is expressing themselves and self-reflecting. So here goes. Darling, you got called fat by your friends when all this started. And then you worked really hard to make sure that it would never happen again. You lost a lot of weight and now you're regaining it. So I'm wondering if you imagine that you can't feel safe that way. If you're getting a nod of the head, if you're getting some kind of, yes, then you could validate with, it makes perfect sense that you're looking for a way to feel safe. You know, you experience some really cruel bullying. You know, of course you need to feel safe when you go to school. And then you may, as a parent, give some kind of assurance about safety. We're dealing with the school. This is not going to happen. It's not okay. So you're moving away from this whole business of having to be thin or the need to be muscular, and you're concentrating on the need to be safe from bullying. Now, even if your child wasn't bullied, they have eyes and ears around them. They may have seen others. It could be, hey, you've seen others getting fat bullied, and I wonder if you're wanting to protect yourself from that. Or, you know, there's this whole culture around us of thin or toned, and some of your friends have got smaller bodies and they skip meals and they're always on diets or they're always at the gym. Is this perhaps, you know, that you need to be accepted and liked? You need to be part of the in-group? You need to make sure you'll never be one of those who gets bullied or who gets left out. Maybe you see that the dominant group are excluding others, or judging or gossiping about other people's body shape. Maybe in your mind, to be liked, you have to be a particular body shape. Otherwise, people won't even see you, or they won't see you for who you are. So you're making these suggestions, you know, not all of them, but, you know, one or two of them, and see how that lands. And if you're getting a bit of a yes, then you could validate, which is, you know, I can totally see how it's important to be loved and to have friends and to be easily accepted in your group and to be safe from shameful comments. You know, that makes a lot of sense. No wonder you're really tense, as you know that we're busy helping you eat meals. So again, with all that, you've moved away from this whole am I fat, am I fat? It's more about safety in school, acceptance, companionship, being part of society and your friendship group. In the next audios, I will make some other guesses on what might really matter to your child. And remember, if you're just going round in circles, if this is making it worse, you put a stop to the conversation. You say, darling, this is not useful. Let's move on to other things. Shall we do X, Y, Z? I want to help you with another aspect of empathy for your child when they're very anxious and go on about how they're fat. It may be that your child's brain is sending them very real and convincing messages that they are enormous. Their tummy is way out there. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like them. It doesn't feel right. I have heard a researcher talk about how some people with anorexia will walk sideways through an opening where they actually have plenty of space. Anyone else would walk straight on. How confusing could it be for your child to feel that way very genuinely, and everybody is telling them, you're too thin, you need to gain weight. Maybe it would be like me and everyone telling you, you have horns on your head. Can't you see them? Can't you feel them? They're there. Or for example, when I think I'm standing straight, I have a shoulder that's higher than the other. And if someone tries to bring my shoulders level, it feels really strange. So we each get our reality from sensory signals and brain interpretations. So maybe one of the reasons for your child's distress is that what everyone else is telling them about their body really doesn't match their sensations, their reality. That brings a sense of confusion and mistrust, which will raise their anxiety. So here are some examples of how you could start a compassionate conversation around that. You really truly have a sensation that you've got this large tummy and it's all the way out there, and that's what you're seeing in the mirror, and it's so confusing because people are telling you that's not true. We're telling you you need to gain weight. So who do you trust? I get it that it would be very, very confusing. And then you could check, is this how it is for you? We can't fix this. We can't stop them from seeing what they're seeing. But sometimes with my daughter, I could remind her that at times she had seen herself much more normal, and it fluctuated depending on her mood and the time of day and the level of stress she was at. So it was useful to remind her of that, and just to give her my sorrow for the confusion she was in. And then I think all any of us can do is ask for trust. Say, I can see how it's crazy for you, and we're your loving parents, and please trust us. Soon this will make more sense to you. Let's move on to another aspect which may thoroughly confuse your child and lose their trust. For some kids, it's absolutely horrific because they look up charts online about what is supposed to be an ideal weight and what is overweight and what is obese. And even worse, there may be one or two clinicians on the team who are using such charts rather than looking at your child's individual history and needs. So your child comes along to you and says, look, you're getting it all wrong. I'm already in the healthy range. You're going to make me overweight. So again, empathy. Gosh, no wonder you're confused. You found this on an actual government website, a health website. Yeah, no wonder. Now look, we actually know more about this than is on this site. This site is statistical. We know about what you need. And at the same time, don't say but, and at the same time, I get that that's really confusing for you. No wonder it's been hard for you to eat. We'd really like you to trust us on that one. We're taking good care of you. And if the conflicting messages come from clinicians rather than from an online chart, then you'll have to decide how you solve that. It may be that you can't get the team to all sing from the same hymn sheet, in which case you might say to your child, look, we've researched this, we actually know better. What this nurse or therapist or doctor has done is like go into a shoe shop to choose shoes for you, and instead of seeing what you actually need, they've said to the shop owner, what is the average shoe size for people of this sex, this age and this height? Strictly speaking, in terms of averages, the word is median here. And then whatever that number is, that's what they're getting for you. Darling, we really know better. This is hard for you to imagine right now. Please trust us. As you start renourishing your child, they're likely to freak out pretty soon that they're gaining weight, which of course is the whole point. They have to be renourished. So here they are, they're freaking out and you're wondering what to say. Now, one of the routes you might want to take, and it's not the only one, is to give empathy for their distress. Here's how it would go.
Now, at the same time as the mood improves, you've also got the opposite pressure, which is, I'm gaining weight. And you saw that. The best you can do is be a loving parent. You're really upset that you've gained weight. Yeah, you say you worked so hard to lose it, and now you've gained it again. I really understand that you are incredibly upset. And I'm guessing that maybe you don't like how your body feels, so you're giving a lot of empathy. You don't like how your tummy feels. Do you think you're going to balloon out to there? So you can voice her worst fears. What is it you fear here? No, I get that. And I understand that you feel uncomfortable and that you're grieving all your hard work. My daughter would wail, I did all this hard work for nothing. And I would just go, yeah, because yes, it's true. And B, I'm trying to show I really get that it's painful for her. It doesn't mean she's right. It doesn't mean I approve of her beliefs, which are deluded, or of her behaviors, which are very harmful. I empathize with her pain.
If you show compassion, you give your child a little bit of space for grief. It may get them to a place of acceptance, of wisdom, that losing weight was not a useful strategy, and they just don't want to go there again. Hopefully this would be beyond an intellectual understanding. It would be deeper than that. So yes, it's really tough for our children. If it wasn't, then they wouldn't have an eating disorder. So they deserve kindness for how they feel, even though we can see that their thinking is very distorted. What will play in our favor is that as they do regain weight and become renourished, their thinking and their mood improves. So they stop fearing weight to the level that they used to fear it. They'll still fear it a little bit, they still won't like it, but it won't be the level of distress that they have in the very early days when they're very undernourished. So you might think that if you increase their weight, they will be even more distressed, but it doesn't happen that way. Now, just to be clear, the fact that your child may be horrified by weight gain is absolutely no reason to slow down. Going fast with weight gain is your friend, and it's their friend. That's what's going to make them feel a lot better. It might be that your child has got some idea of some crazy exponential, sudden, my body's going to change overnight kind of thing. And changes in our bodies take a little while to adjust to. That happens at any age. It happens as we get older. Maybe if that's going on in your child's mind, you could try something like, does it feel like from one day to the next you might get a completely different body and it would feel bad and you wouldn't be able to cope with it? Yeah, so when you saw your last weight reading and it was higher than the previous one, you freaked out. Is it because you kind of thought, this is going to go on forever and it's going to be huge changes? Everybody needs to cope with things gently. Nothing sudden's going to happen. Nothing bad is going to happen. We're taking good care of you. Yeah, we know what we're doing. The most precious thing you can do, I believe, is to make your child feel like you care, you love them, you don't think they're stupid. You're really relying on a connection because they're frightened. There's only so far that your logical explanations can go about the rate of weight gain is gradual and your mind will adjust with it. You will cope with it. This can come up after open weighings. If your child is being shown their weight, as much as we try to be scientific about it, it's not really linear. Sometimes they gain 1.5 kilo and sometimes they gain 300 grams. We don't always know why. And when it is 1.5 kilo, your child can really freak out. You can try and explain, but the bottom line is, look, trust us here. And you're going to be okay and you will cope with it. And eventually you're going to be happy. You won't care about these things. You'll feel good in your body and you'll have a great life. In spite of this anxiety of your child about weight gain being too fast and their body changing too suddenly, this is, just to be clear, definitely not a reason for you to slow down their weight recovery. There are some therapists who believe that you can go too fast, and they say things like the psychological has to keep pace with the physical changes. I don't see that happening. Much more mainstream and much more reflected in what I read and what I know is you go for rapid weight gain. Obviously to restore physical health as quickly as possible. And also, it really helps with the mental side. The more your child gains weight, the more they're okay with gaining weight. That's the general picture anyway. If they're gaining 100 grams a week, you're not going to see the progress. They're just going to cling on to their fear of gaining significant weight. So you have to drive ahead with that one. I want to take you through what you might say in this rather common situation, which is, I can only be happy when I'm thin. And now you've made me really unhappy because you've made me gain weight. Sometimes you hear these things in a real crisis moment after a weighing. Your child is completely freaked out because their weight has gone up and you're really trying to reduce the temperature in order to make the next meal succeed. Sometimes they'll also be going, I worked so hard to lose weight and be happy, and you're destroying all this. I hate you. I hate being fat. I can only be happy when I'm thin. So you could just say, we're not discussing it, my darling. Let's go and do something nice. Or you could use it as an opportunity for empathy, while still sticking to your guns, of course, that the weight gain, the refeeding has to continue. I was in conversation with a mum who was telling me her daughter was like this, and I suggested that she repeat what her daughter was saying, like, oh gosh, I get it. You remember being really happy when you were thinner, and now you're freaking out and you're cross at me because we're working to rebuild your health. Did I hear you correctly? Is that what's going on? No, it's because you're making me fat. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So you remember being happier before, and now you're really frightened that you're going to be really unhappy because the way you see it, we're making you fat now. Is that correct? So here I'm voicing her fears. I'm repeating what she said. I'm not agreeing with her. I'm making her feel heard. So hopefully she will not keep repeating herself. And she'll see, hopefully from my body language, my tone of voice, that I am interested and I'm not dismissing her and judging her. And I think it's really useful to show that you feel sorrow about her suffering, for instance.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm so sorry. This process is really tough. And you remember being happy at the weight you were before, and I'm guessing you worked really hard to be at that lower weight. Is that right? And you really felt it was going to help you and make you happy. It made me happy. It made me happy. It made you happy. Okay.
It's very tempting to argue and to remind your child how very unhappy and withdrawn and isolated they've been when they were too thin. But I think they won't hear it. They'll just argue with you. So compassion is the better route. So I'm not judging her. I'm not telling her she's stupid. I've heard her concern. I've showed compassion for her suffering. And now I'm also going to normalize it. Normalizing it is usually part of the empathy package. So you're not alone in your suffering. You're in good company. Others have gone through this. You're not stupid. You're not bad. So you might say something like this.
What I want you to know that it's very normal at the beginning. People really don't like weight gain. They really hate it and they feel miserable about it. They say, I was happy at the weight I was before. And it's really painful for them to think all that effort was wasted. I really get it.
It may be that you'll see some relaxation in them and that they're going to let go of this conversation. Any opportunity that you see in their body language, their tone of voice, take it. Don't prolong the conversation any longer than necessary. Get on with your lives. On the other hand, it may be that your child will continue asking questions, wanting reassurance, and you can decide whether you keep tracking with compassion what it is that they're distressed about, or, darling, let's move on. It's really not useful to discuss this. Let's go and do something nice. It doesn't mean you've wasted your time having the earlier conversation and getting to this stage. Your compassion is still going to make its mark. You've made them feel heard and listened to. And maybe with your compassion, you've also enabled them to eat the next meal, even though they're still reeling from shock over their latest weight gain. What about the role of education and good old-fashioned logic when your child is having anxieties about being fat? Usually, logical explanations don't stick in someone's mind when they're very distressed. So that's why, in general, I would go for compassion first. But at some stage, either because your child is pretty well along the road to recovery, or because your compassion has really worked and they're relaxed, at this stage there may indeed be a role for explanations. And indeed, many therapists will use cognitive behavioral type techniques, CBT, or cognitive dissonance techniques, or self-compassion approaches to go, what's going on here with your attitude to your body shape. There's no magic bullet, but therapists work on this, some of them. Others will tell you this will pass with time. Meanwhile, what can you do to just nudge things along? Well, you could be educating your son or daughter about natural fluctuations in body weight and in our appetite, different times of year. There's also different levels of water retention at different times of the month. And obviously, our tummy shape is going to change straight after a meal. And then there's the whole thing about how we're all different. We're not all supposed to be the same body shape. You could also keep coaching them in compassion. Oh gosh, I don't like the feeling of my waistband right now after this meal. Or I'm feeling really inadequate because I've just been comparing myself with a friend and I'm telling myself I'm not good enough. So what to do? I'm going to give myself some kindness for it and remind myself that it passes. Also, you might want to offer a positive vision of the future. One day you're going to be so relaxed and so happy in your body, you're going to feel great. While everyone else is worrying about what they eat, you'll have a body that serves you well and a great sense of freedom. Another idea is when your child freaks out because they don't look good in a video or in a photo. You could give them some education around camera angles and the distortions of a 2D image, and they will know, probably even better than you do, how much images are manipulated with filters, retouching, hours of makeup, so many pictures taken and discarded before people post on social media. They may know this, but you might want to remind them that this is a way of soothing themselves. You might also want to discuss how models, actors, bodybuilders not only have particular genes, but also it's their job and their focus to work on their bodies. And your child may recognize that they have very different values and priorities. Another topic, why is your son or daughter exposing themselves to very narcissistic, showy-offy people on social media? Is it giving them a little jolt of inadequacy? Unfriend them, unfollow them. Teach your child the concept of exposing themselves and nourishing themselves with good things. Another bit of education is understanding the interpretations of our brain. And so what we sense may not actually be reality. There are some really fun optical illusions to look up. And the simplest one we all know about is how a spoon in a glass of water looks bent. With my daughter, it was useful to remind her every now and again of a hypnotism show that I had been to. The hypnotist had convinced a dozen people on the stage that an elephant had come in. And the look on their faces, and they could see it, they could smell it, they could touch it. And, if a hypnotist can do that in a few minutes, what else is our brain doing to us under the influence of habit, of society, genetics, biology, chemical processes, states of anxiety, malnutrition, and so on. So you might want to give your child some level of education when it seems appropriate, as well as a real good dose of hope that we can retrain our attitudes, our default thinking, what thoughts we indulge in, what we expose ourselves to. We can exert self-compassion when we're still a bit vulnerable, and life becomes easy and sweet. On the subject of your child asking for reassurance, am I fat? Are you going to make me fat? I mentioned in another clip how it's counterproductive in the long term to be saying things like, we won't make you fat. Even though it might seem like it will reassure our children, in the longer term, it's giving an unproductive message. The message that we really want to give our children is one that's sometimes called body diversity, body acceptance, body positivity, body neutral, health at every size. So these are all terms you can look up on the web to learn more about it. It's really an attitude which we don't find a huge amount in our society, but it will be very protective for our children, so that to really, really recover, they need to embrace this. And it's an attitude where we go, it doesn't matter what size I am. I'm feeling great, I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling strong. My body works for me. My body carries me places. I have fun, I laugh, I can run, I can dance, I can enjoy movement. I'm attractive for who I am, and it's not about a particular body shape. It brings in an acceptance of other people, and when we accept other people, we can also accept ourselves a lot more. We don't have this imperative to be an acceptable type of body. It brings in a notion of kindness and empathy and diversity and social justice, in the same way as nowadays we've probably all heard of unconscious bias with regard to racism. We should start being aware that this is also happening with body shape. We have probably all got some kind of unconscious fatism, given the society we've been brought in. So, when your child seems ready to hear this kind of conversation, you can gently start bringing it in. This idea of body diversity. And the am I fat question may be your entry point into such conversations. Now, I realize it's extremely idealistic to think that in the early stages of treatment, when your child is very anxious, very scared, very much focused on their body shape, it's really probably not a good time to go and educate them and change their unconscious biases. But at some stage, be on the lookout for that. And then that's how you will start answering the "Am I fat?" question. Speaking in terms of body acceptance and body diversity isn't a luxury. It's part of our children completely recovering, being comfortable with their body shape and not having some kind of mental maximum to their weight or their BMI. It paves the way for intuitive eating, for trust of your body, for trust in life, and it protects them from ever going on a diet again, which is absolutely essential for relapse prevention. Let's talk about meals in school. It's going to be essential for quite a while that your child is managing all meals and all snacks, and that means making sure that they have the right level of support in school. As many of our children struggle with internal conflict, it's common that they eat less than they should or not at all if nobody is checking. Schools are more and more proud to collaborate. But if you need more resources, there are several pages on my website, and it's also normal for treatment providers to facilitate arrangements or provide staff training. In the early days, it's a no-brainer that a child needs to stay at home because they're physically unwell or because meals require such a high level of support and maybe take a long time. Sometimes school or social interactions add a level of stress which your child is not equipped for right now. It's just too much. If school is going to be a positive force in your child's life, then here are some options. You could at first arrange for your child to go to school only for a couple of hours a day. That reduces their stress and means they are home for all meals and snacks. Or you could get them home for lunch. I did that with my daughter for a while. Sometimes she hardly managed any lunch, so I kept her home in the afternoon on the basis that she needed more energy for classes. It wasn't to punish her. I tried to be clear on that. Or you can have your child meet you in the car park or in a room set aside for you by the school. You still need an arrangement for snack time because even if your child is getting all the calories they need, if there is a gap of more than 3 or 4 hours between meals, to my knowledge, that reinforces the eating disorder. Some youngsters feel compelled to bin some of their packed lunch before they meet a member of staff who's going to support them for a meal. They may have an internal message that if there's any way they can eat less, then they have a duty to do so. To guard against this, it's common for parents to hand the lunchbox in at the school office. If your child can manage a snack or lunch without a great level of support, then it becomes appropriate for the school to appoint a member of staff to be with your child, maybe with 1 or 2 friends as well, usually in a quiet room, so that an adult can observe whether your child is eating or not and report back to you. Occasionally, a young person has a close friend who is willing to take on that supervising and reporting role. And that might be okay. It requires a little bit of assessment and see if it's not likely to sour their relationship. Once your child's eating is even more secure, you could move to a lighter level of supervision, where snack is unsupervised and lunch must be eaten in the dining hall, where there are staff members overseeing all the students, and your child knows that the staff will report back to you if they spot any issues. You might want to keep a low-level, non-intrusive version of this type of checking for several years after your child is recovered, because if they relapse, it will probably start with them cutting out food in school. I know that is sad, and we want to bring in normality once our child seems recovered, and so I'm suggesting that this level of supervision is quite light and non-intrusive. What might also help is that some schools have electronic records of a student's meal choices or of their spending in the dining hall. That can be an open or covert way of checking that your child is probably doing okay. Another tip, only useful to some people, is to give your child remote support by having them photograph their food or having a video call with you. Another system, if your child is reasonably secure in their eating, is that they bring back home any of the packed lunch that they did not manage to eat. That way you can discuss and problem solve for the next day. Pay attention to the difficulty presented by any particular meal. So if you're giving your child a packed lunch, practice that particular lunch at home. If your child is eating school food and the options are displayed online, you can help them to choose ahead of time. So, some amount of risk assessment and planning to judge the level of support that your child needs in school and to set it up. Your child may well hate the idea of anyone supervising their meal in school. They may find it quite stressful to have to sneak out at lunchtime if they're meeting you in the car. They may have had a bad experience. I remember in primary school, my little girl was being supervised by a staff member who commented on the smell of her egg sandwich. So connect, listen to their worries, and show your compassion. For instance, I totally get that having meals with a staff member is just not normal for someone your age. You want to be treated like any self-respecting, smart 16-year-old. I get that. Or you could say, sure, it's perfectly understandable that you want to have some privacy and some dignity. Or you might say, of course you want to be with your friends at lunchtime. I want that too. That's what we're aiming for. A life where things are easy and fun, my darling. Remember, connect before you direct. So show your child that you are listening, that you really feel for them, and then problem solve. For instance, you might say, okay, you really don't like Mrs. Smith, so I'll request that she's not on your support rota. Or you might say, I get it. You're worried that the staff will be staring at you while you're eating and judging you. All right, okay, no way. I want you treated with respect and kindness. You're doing a lot of courageous work already. Look, the clinic is going to give the school staff some training. Would you also like for me and you to speak to the staff and discuss how best to help you? Of course, listen out for your child's ideas. For instance, they will know better how to meet you in the car park without it looking strange. And be persistent. If you back off and your child misses out on the nutrition they need, you're unlikely to get progress. So for example, sweetheart, I totally get how you much prefer to have a completely normal lunch situation, being with your friends, and you don't want to look odd as you meet me in the car park. And at the same time, not but, at the moment, this is the level of meal support that you need. Look, let's do that for a couple of weeks and then we will review. And in the meanwhile, if there's anything that can make it easier for you, then let's keep talking, all right? So, it's understandable that our child should hate having meal support in school. Let's listen to them and use compassionate persistence. I'm going to talk about perfectionism, the sense of self-worth, academic ambitions. Our children have often a genetic gift, which is an ability to be great achievers, to focus, to really put their mind to a task and doing it well. However, until they learn how to master this wonderful gift, these attributes are an eating disorder risk. You've probably heard that perfectionism is a big risk factor. It's also very common for our children to have poor self-esteem. It's as though they don't think they own a place in this world unless they achieve. Our children also tend to be quite high on the anxiety scale. Again, that's a genetic thing which people can learn to manage perfectly well. So if your child's strategy at the moment is to feel safe by getting the best grades, the best academic future, being the best at everything, then they need better tools. Being the parents of a kid with an eating disorder brings us so much wisdom. Your message to your child and to the teachers are something like, we are human beings with a precious life. The aim is to make life beautiful and follow our passions, use our natural skills, and really exams and marks and diplomas are actually a very small part of it. I know this is countercultural. We're in a society that thinks we get security from big diplomas and fancy jobs. But if you Google it, you will find examples of wonderful people who have created beautiful lives. Or if you're very attached to achievement, people who have gone right up to the top of the financial or political world without ever having gone through the academic hoops. So you have a role with your child in making it clear what your values are and that they are not about what your child is achieving. You might also want to give messages of safety, that life works even when we don't get top grades in everything. And I should add, even if we don't earn top money, because a part of our children's anxiety can be translated into, I must have the best grades, the best diplomas in order to earn the best money in order to be safe. Another thing you can do for your child is educate them about the risk factors of perfectionism, of overwork, of attaching your self-esteem to achievement, of attaching your sense of security to achievement, and how this can be turned around to real positives. The analogy might be they've got this amazing wild horse and they need to learn to ride that horse. And that means not letting studies become such an obsessive, scary thing that it actually makes them ill. To give you an example, my daughter noticed how around age 16, she became really, really intense about getting top grades and worked herself into such a frenzy. Obviously, I did my best to protect her from this, but there were limits to what I could do. But she learned from it. And years later, when she was in her first year of university, she said to me, you know, there are some people who are doing better than I am, and I could probably do just as well, but then I'd have to work so much harder. And that's not good for me, and I can't be bothered. There are other things in my life, and what I'm doing is perfectly good enough. So that's an example of someone who's matured into good enough is good enough, and life is rich and has other things in it. I may have played a small part in this by joking with her quite frequently, saying, I expect you to get a C and no more. The only time I didn't actually mean this in my soul was when she was sitting her driving test, and I was thinking, please pass your driving test right away because it's costing so much. So that's all about setting the scene with your child, and there's another audio on school and exam stress. Let's talk about exams and exam stress. The issue here is that our children respond to stress by restricting or engaging in whatever eating disorder behaviors they have. So although we cannot cocoon them for the rest of their lives from stress, and that would not be very intelligent, we should protect them from stress as much as we can, while they're also going through the whole stress of the treatment for the eating disorder. The first thing I propose is you speak to the school, you speak to the teachers, and you explain to them what I've just said. They may think that you're one of these pushy parents who wants them to push your child. Actually, the message you're giving the teachers is, please don't push my child. My child is stressed enough as it is, and we don't have these massive academic ambitions. And indeed, that's a conversation you could really have with your child. Very important, because if there are issues with perfectionism and self-esteem and anxiety, I talk about that in another audio clip. Another thing you can do is recognize that your child is actually in a school system. So unless you pull them out of it, they're there so many hours in school and they have to cope and not get overwhelmed. They have homework to do, they have exams to prepare for. That is reality unless you want to get them out. If you decide to keep them in that system, then teach them study skills. Google Student's Guide to Exams, and you will learn about the brain and how it learns, and you can teach your child real practical things like your brain needs breaks. People who study hour after hour become stupid and they can't remember anything. People who study through the night become stupid. So help your child be effective, and that will mean actually they take breaks and they keep their brain healthy. Another thing you could do is, although your message is not, I want you to do well in exams, you can help them with overwhelm. So even with a perfectionist child, they may get so overwhelmed, they're like flapping about, not knowing what to study next, just raising their anxiety. So help them make a plan and make sure that that plan is really reasonable, that there's just an hour or two of studying here and there and the rest is all lovely stuff and fun and sociable stuff, and help them revise the plan as they go along and learn from it. My husband and I also helped our daughter to make things a bit more pleasant by sitting in cafes with her while she studied and we were reading a book and we were in a nice environment. She said later it actually helped her remember her topics because each topic was associated with a particular cafe in her mind. It made the whole process more light and relaxed. Another thing that you could do, which we did once for our daughter, was to use a private tutor. And there the message has got to be very clearly, this is not to get my child to get better grades. This is to free my child of the overwhelm. In my case, my daughter was sitting through biology, I think it was, miserable, confused. The teacher was so bad. It's horrible to sit through anything where you feel stupid and confused, and then you're going to be examined on it. So if you can afford a private tutor, then great, help your child get that clarity. Another thing you can do is if your child now has a particularly bad teacher in school, they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, we've got Mr. So-and-so and he's awful, he's the worst maths teacher in the whole school, and I'm so unlucky that I got him. In that case, I propose that you intervene, and even though there are school rules that kids can't pick and choose their teachers, you say, look, we've got to reduce my child's stress. There's not a good match here. My child is not learning well and is getting very stressed with not following this teacher. Please change them. Finally, I suggest you use this whole episode of exams to continuously coach your child in managing stress. It's about being aware of your emotions, putting limits on what you do. As a parent, you continue to have a role in putting those limits. So, sweetie, it is now bedtime. Darling, this is time for you to put your computer away and go and have fun. You're helping them manage what they are still not able to manage for themselves. There are probably lots of other things you can do about school, but I think I've thrown quite a few at you, and I hope that some of them will be helpful. In this bite-sized collection, there's quite a few audios on your own well-being. Very, very briefly, I want to say this is to help you and it's not an obligation. I really do not want to add to the level of shoulds and the self-blame and the self-judgment and the I'm not good enough kind of stuff. Please take everything to do with your well-being as a tool that you can take or leave. You're doing amazing, courageous job one way or another anyway. You're good enough. When I was going through the worst of my daughter's illness, I really was wondering, what do I do with my emotions? I feel awful. I'm crying all the time. I can feel this restlessness and anxiety in me. What do I do with it? And I realized I had gone through all my life with some tools, but now I needed better ones. I needed really super skills. So I researched it and discovered there is so much from various fields of psychology and various wisdom fields. And in this collection, you'll find several audio clips, each with one good tool. I hope you'll find them relevant to you and that they increase your sense of well-being and your effectiveness with your child. In my experience, once a tool has worked for you, it becomes part of you, it becomes a skill for life, a really lovely way of being. It makes you stronger, it makes you wiser. At some stage, life is going to get easier, you're going to get less rubbish thrown at you, and these same tools are going to help you thrive and be happy and make life really sweet. parents are taught by well-meaning people to take good care of ourselves, we can get pretty cross. Don't tell me about self-care, don't tell me about bubble baths and me time, when my life is so hectic, it's been turned inside out because my child is my priority. Please understand how serious my situation is. So that is all very true. And at the same time, we are our child's support system. We have to stay strong, we have to stay well in order to be there for them. So it makes complete sense to find ways of both caring for them and developing endurance for ourselves, strength, staying power, avoiding burnout, and protecting ourselves from any risk of post-traumatic stress disorder further down the line. Work out what it is that you really deeply need. Some human needs are so non-negotiable. You need enough sleep, you need rest, you need food, you need movement. You're probably already deficient on some of these. Can you improve on it? Can you mobilize help to improve on it? How about things that give you pleasure? I once asked a whole load of parents what they had done to keep themselves well. Quite a few of them said they reserved time for creative work, for gardening, for going off outdoors. And in my case, I had one evening a week dancing and one evening a week playing music in a pub session. My husband had similar 2 evenings out doing music. And some of this was with people who knew nothing of our home situation. It was actually great to not think about eating disorders for a whole evening. This worked because my husband and I were equally competent at giving my daughter dinner and supporting her in whatever state she was. If you've decided that your partner or your mother or your brother, whoever is in your support network, if you've decided that they're not competent to share the work with you, are you absolutely certain? Can you possibly give them the privilege of becoming competent? Returning to my little survey of parents, there were plenty who also got well-being top-ups from small things that didn't require extra time or planning, like stroking the dog, listening to music, reading a book, getting into a Netflix series. Another thing, as I record this during a lockdown for coronavirus, I think the world has woken up to a very deep human need, the need for interconnection. When my daughter was ill, I started off the way I had always lived, which was self-reliance, being an island. And I remember having a real aha moment when I discovered the word interdependence, and it's a beautiful human thing. Just think about this. When you ask someone to help you, they get help us high. How good is that? So to meet the need for interconnection, for some of us, including myself, that could mean a really good therapist or counselor. It would definitely mean friends. I know a single mother who created a WhatsApp group of friends whose sole purpose was to support her. I admire that. And you can also get very specialized and well-informed friends on a parent's online forum. Bear in mind that it's very unlikely that you can meet all your needs. But it looks as though if we're well-nourished in some aspects, we can be in a good place, which makes us resilient to whatever might happen next. Now, here's a big one. Give yourself permission to be well and to be joyful, even while your child is unwell and is suffering. Don't confuse compassion with everybody being gloomy and down together. On the contrary, your well-being gives your child the message that there is a good life out there and that they haven't completely destroyed you. So that removes some of the fear and the guilt that they're going through. See if you like this quote from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. So be well, be able to keep that light alive for those that you love. So, my friends, take care of your human needs, allow yourself to be joyful, value interdependence and let your friends know how they can help, and give yourself permission to do all of this very imperfectly.